Yeah, I'll pass over to him and he'll go through how he became Muslim and take some benefits from that, inshallah ta'ala.
Inshallah ta'ala. Jazakallah khair. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Lahul hamdul hasan wa thana'ul jameel. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. يقول الحق وهو يهدي السبيل وأشهد أن محمدًا عبد الله ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. So first of all, we'd like to welcome everybody, and I'm really pleased to be able to come for a second day. We were here yesterday and we had a program, and today is part 2, and today is all about new Muslims. And me myself, I am someone who accepted Islam now, how long ago? I used to say, you know how it used to be, I used to say to people, it was this long ago, and then the years go by and go by and go by. I used to say to people 10 years ago, then it became 15 years ago, then it became 20 years ago. And I think we are looking at 26 years now, approximately. Maybe a little bit less than that. Certainly over 25 years ago, I became Muslim. At that time, I was 14 years old, so I was pretty young, although you would not, or you might be surprised to know that there's quite a lot of people who accept Islam at a young age. It's not the case that I was like this rare person who became Muslim at 14. Actually, since then, I have met at least 2 other people just by chatting to people, oh, when did you become Muslim, who also said the same thing. So it's not something that is, it shouldn't be that strange to you. That's better. I'd like to start, I guess, by telling you about a little bit about my background. Because I think if you're going to do a good revert story, and I've done my story a few times, I would also like to sort of give a little disclaimer that it is a long time ago and I can only tell you what I remember, right? So the story, it's not that it changes because it's the same story, but I just remember different things at different times. So if you hear different versions or riwayat of this story, partly it's because I was very young and it's difficult to remember everything, but partly just different things come to my mind at different times. So, give you a little bit of background. I was raised in a city called Newcastle upon Tyne. I wasn't quite born there. I was born a little way away, maybe about 20 miles away or 30 miles away, not very far away. But I came to Newcastle when I was 6 years old, and I grew up in that city. And Newcastle, I mean, you guys are from London, so, you know, anything north of Watford is like north, all the way up there in the north. But yeah, we have electricity, running water, you know, all kinds of things. People drive cars as well. But no, Newcastle is way up north, right? In terms of London, it is way up north. It's 5 hours drive from here, so it's far. And it's a medium-sized city, or, you know, it's not a tiny place. It's not like a town or a village. But it's not a huge city. It's nothing like, you know, your London and Birmingham and Manchester. It's a middle kind of medium-sized city in the northeast of England. And in terms of my family background, I was born into what I would call, I don't think my parents would like me to say this, but if I'm being honest, a nominally Christian family. In other words, a family who say they're Christian, but you know, let's be honest, it's easy to be a Christian, right? In the sense that there's not really anything which is haram, not really anything which you can't do, not really any rules and regulations, not really much to believe in, no real prayers you have to attend. So, you know, the family are Christian in the sense that they were, you know, they believe in that, or they would follow or attribute themselves to that religion. But they weren't practicing people. They weren't people who go to church every week. They weren't people who, probably we went to churches for weddings. We went to churches for maybe a funeral. That's about it. I don't remember going to church for any other reason. Yes, my grandparents were different. They might have gone to church for example, at Christmas time, they might have gone to church at Easter time, but they were still not like every Sunday churchgoers. So I would say nominally Christian. So if you'd asked me when I was 13, what religion are you? I would have said that I was Christian. But if you'd asked me to name where the local church was, I probably couldn't have told you where the local church was. I definitely didn't have a church that was my church. Like I didn't have a church that I went to regularly, or that I knew the vicar or the pastor or the priest or whatever. No, I didn't have a church that I went to that I knew about. But if you'd asked me, I would have said that I was Christian. Having said that, you now ask the next question, did I believe in God? So those two actually don't always line up, because some people might be brought up in a Christian family, but they doubt the existence of God. I always believed in the existence of God, but I don't think that I was very much attached to the idea of Christianity. Like if somebody told me it was wrong, I wouldn't have been upset. I wouldn't have defended it and said, no, how dare you say it's wrong? It's 100% right. I'm sure about it. I would have been like, yeah, probably it is wrong. I didn't have anything too much in my heart to attach myself to Christianity. My parents, from their side, my paternal grandmother, my dad's mum, she was, quite a little bit more religious. And so on her side of the family, there are some people who went to church every week, which, like, if you imagine, like, your average Muslim goes to Jumu'ah at least, right? Like, if someone says, I don't even go to Jumu'ah, we really put him right down there, like somebody, even your average, like, non-practicing Muslim, usually, most people at least go to Jumu'ah. A very practicing Christian goes to church once a week. Like someone who is mutawwa', proper practicing, they go once a week. So for me, on my grandmother's side, yes. On my mother's side, there were some of the family who were Jehovah's Witnesses. I never really knew that, like I was too young. They had left it long before that, but there were some who were Jehovah's Witnesses, which have some interesting beliefs. Like there are some things that interest us, like, they might not necessarily believe in, for example, they don't celebrate Christmas, for example. That's one thing. Like, so there are certain things that, that I kind of had in my mind, but it was never part of my life. It wasn't part of my childhood. Family-wise, we were from a regular family. We were not like extremely rich, but we were not by any means poor. We were kind of like in the middle, just a regular family. Dad had a decent job. We had a decent upbringing, like a good upbringing, good family life. Everyone more or less got on. And I think my probably journey started, if you like, probably around the time that I was in year 8 at school. Sometimes I tell this story abroad and I have to explain what year 8 is, but since you all guys are here in England, it makes sense to you. It probably started around year 8 of school. Now, I didn't become Muslim until year 10, so there's a gap there. But there's two things that started in parallel. One thing is that I started, as you start to grow up, and you're probably, 12 years old in year 8, maybe, something like that. You start to misbehave a bit, You get into the tweens, the early teens, and you start to misbehave a bit. So I started to misbehave a bit. I started to have some friends who were not great for me. They were kind of mischief makers. I wouldn't say they were like criminal or something. They weren't like a gang or something that were like stabbing people on the streets or something. They weren't into something really bad, but they were making mischief. They were causing trouble for people. Small things, breaking things that belong to people, scratching cars and breaking windows, and they were causing mischief. And they were a group of people who were just causing mischief. And I wasn't like that at all. And that's me being honest, I really wasn't. I was quite an academic child. I did very well at school. But when you do very well at school, you often you don't want to be the one who does well at school, right? You kind of want to be like under the radar. So my way of being under the radar was to, spend time with these guys who were causing mischief, and they were, making trouble for people. And the problem with a group of friends like that is it's very toxic. It's very toxic. Because each of you is making trouble for the other one as well. So you're constantly getting the other person into trouble. You're constantly trying to be the one that doesn't get left behind. Everyone backbites everybody else. Everyone stabs everyone in the back. Everyone, will try to be the one that leaves somebody else behind to take the fall for whatever they did. So it was not a nice environment. And that group of friends had a big effect on me. I don't think I realized at the time how big of an effect they were having on me, but my mom saw it. And she was very upset, and she didn't want me to hang around with these people. She's like, you're not like that, you're doing well at school, you're a strong student, you're a good boy, why are you hanging around with these guys? And I was 12, man, I thought I knew everything, right? So I thought I was, king of the city or something like that. I was just telling my mom, I know what I'm doing. They're not that bad, we're just having fun, we're just messing around, we're just having a laugh, it's not serious. But what I did, it had an effect on me. It had an effect on my relationship with my mom. So for example, we had some rules in the house, right? Like for example, one of the rules we had in the house, like smoking would not be tolerated, for example. Like that was a rule my parents would have. Like, English families, like not everyone has that many rules in the family, but there's some things you don't do. So like for my family, like for example, like smoking is a red line, you can't do that. And I would sometimes bring back a box of cigarettes just to wind my mom up. And stuff with a lot, just to make my mom just to make a spark in the house. I wasn't smoking them. I just would bring it back just to so my mom would be like, oh, what is this? This is your friends. I told you what these guys are gonna bring you to do. That kind of thing. I would just make trouble. And around that time, I even got to the point where these friends, I'll tell you the kind of people they were, is that we had a conversation one day and they said would any of you even dare to run away from home? And me being the stupid one, who was trying to fit in, I was like, yeah, I'll do it. They're like, yeah, you won't really run away. We're not talking about your back garden. I mean, really, will you proper leave home and disappear? I was like, I'll do it. You'll never do it. I'll totally do it. So I was like, fine, tomorrow, watch. And I did. I ran away. I managed to get a ticket on the train. I managed to go 100 miles. I'm 12 years old. On the train, I managed to get 3 police forces searching for me everywhere. I thought it was great. I thought it was the most fun thing ever. The police are going up and down the train. I'm hiding I don't know where I was hiding at the time. Probably in the bathroom or something like that. And I'm running from place to place. And then, in the end, I call my mom from York, which is about 100 miles away from Newcastle. And I'd gone on the train and I called my mom, and my mom's crying on the phone. And I'm she's like, and the same people who said we want to see if you'll do it, they called my mom straight away. And it was just a very messed up family environment like that, or friends. The friend environment was not good. I came back anyways. Mom said, please come home. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll come home. I came back, got into trouble, got myself grounded. So it wasn't that I wasn't going through, it wasn't a really bad group of people, but they weren't good. They weren't a good group of people. They were having an effect on me, and it was hurting my relationship with my parents. But the consequence of all of that was that I got grounded. I got grounded, grounded. You are not leaving the house. You're not leaving the house at all. Put that aside for a second, and I'll tell you something that was happening at the same time. I'm still 12 years old at this time. I had an RE teacher who was very eccentric. He was a guy. He was very eccentric. I mean, this guy had a long ponytail. He wore cowboy boots. And he was really interested in every religion. Really, genuinely, everything except Christianity. He had no interest in Christianity. But he would have, if you walked into his classroom, there were statues, idols, pictures of things, probably pictures of the Kaaba, pictures of whatever. He was just interested in religion. Other than, you can say Eastern religion if you like. He was interested in religions that came from the East. So he had artifacts, probably some prayer beads hanging on the wall, all different kinds of things. But he was really interested in it. And actually, I didn't realize how much of an influence he had on me. But I think one thing I can say, he never talked about Islam to me that I can remember. Because he was interested in Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, all kinds of things. But one of the things that I can honestly say is, he actually got me interested in religion. He actually opened my eyes to the fact that there are other religions than the religion that my parents were brought up in. That's probably what I can say that he did. So I'm getting myself into trouble. I'm getting myself, grounded. Relationship with parents is not great at that time. I was causing them a lot of heartache, a lot of trouble. And probably they were thinking, where did we go wrong? Like, what did we do to, our son's a good boy, he's doing well at school. Why is he trying to ruin his life as much as possible? And sadly, that is the situation of many of us, Muslim and non-Muslim, that we are trying our very best to ruin our own lives with these two hands. And I was like that. I was trying my very best to ruin my life as much as possible. In the end, I moved school because in Newcastle, between year 8 and year 9, there was a change of school. We had a change of school between year 4 and 5, and we had another change of school between year 8 and 9. And it's still in some parts of the country, it's like that. So we had 3 levels of school. We had primary, middle, and high. So the difference between middle and high was between year 8 and year 9. In year 9, I moved school and I naturally drifted apart from my old friends. Probably me, myself, I wasn't really comfortable being with them, and they weren't really suited to me anyway. And already I saw that I was getting grounded, I was getting punishments and all that stuff. So naturally, I thought, new school, I'm gonna be a new person. So I went, year 9, I started, and probably for most of year 9, sometimes I would meet some of those people from the past, but generally speaking, I was pretty much by myself. I was quite isolated in that year. Now, I did know some Muslims, but bear in mind, this is Newcastle, so we don't have large numbers of Muslims in the class. We don't really have, the class is kind of all people like me at that time. There wasn't a lot of diversity in the class. There wasn't a lot of people from different countries or different ethnic backgrounds or different places. There was maybe one guy from Bangladesh, there was maybe one guy from Pakistan, and that was probably it. The school year, the entire school year had, I don't think, more than 20 Muslims in the whole year. So I'm not gonna say that I was like around Muslims watching them all the time, but I was kind of aware of those people. And I don't think at that time I knew the difference between Islam and other religions from that area. For example, I don't think could I have really known the difference in that time when I was 13 between a Muslim and maybe a Sikh, for example. Like if they weren't dressed differently. I'm not sure if I would have really known the difference between them. Like for me though, I saw, people from afar, a few Muslims around and things like that. Over time, I did make some friends with some Muslim brothers. Again, I wasn't really close friends with them, but I made some friendship groups and things like that. And my mom was happy because, I was moving away from the bad group that I was with. I think what started to happen at that point, and I can't tell you whether it was year 9 or 10, but we continued with RE classes. And I'm pretty sure it was in year 9, but it might have been even in year 10, where I had an RE teacher. She was a lady, and this is the first time I remember studying about Islam. So maybe it's unfair, I always feel it's unfair to say this, that nobody gave me dawah. Maybe that's unfair to those brothers, because I'm sure they actually tried, and I'm sure they did show me some things about Islam before I became Muslim. But there wasn't a time when someone said to me, Tim, you should become Muslim, like that, or we'd like to invite you to become Muslim or something like that. It wasn't like that. What there was though is we started to learn about Islam at school. Now it's not, what they're going to teach you, right? They're not going to teach you they're not going to give you da'wah. They're not going to, the teacher, she was some kind of neo-Buddhist type of thing. She believes in karma and the universe and whatever, but she doesn't really believe in Christianity. And she was just kind of in that sort of She liked the ideas, some of the ideas, philosophical ideas from other religions. She wasn't really Christian like that too much. When she taught us about Islam, one thing I'll say, she taught us very factually. She was very, very factual. Like she really did tell the truth. She didn't like it much. I remember very clearly one time where she actually used to make fun of the Muslims. So she said, Muslims have to pray 5 times a day. And then she said to the class, and there was like a couple of Muslims in the class, maybe 3, 4 by that time they were in the class. She said, which of you guys pray 5 times a day? You're asking 13-year-old kids. Yes, I would love it if they all put their hand up. It would be great if they would have all put their hand up. But, you know, one person said 3 times a day. One person said 2 times a day. One person said, don't pray at all. One person said, I don't pray at all. So she said, see, this is the problem with Islam. I remember these words. I remember it like yesterday. She said, see, this is the problem with Islam. You pray 5 times a day, but none of you do it. And I agree. I don't think what she said is necessarily wrong. That is the problem. The problem is that we have the perfect religion, but we ourselves don't necessarily practice it as much as we should. There were some things, I think, and it's difficult to speak because it's a long time ago, but there were some things that mattered a lot to me before I became Muslim. And I think when I saw things in Islam, it made a big difference to me, the things that kind of attracted me to Islam. I'm going to mention maybe between 5 and 10 of the things that really attracted me to Islam. And I think the reason they attracted me to Islam is, number one, that they're the truth because it's from Allah. But also for me at that time, it just made perfect sense and it agreed with some of the way that I used to feel. So I'll tell you the first one. We talked about the concept of God. She said Muslims worship one God alone and with no partner. He has no father, no son, is not represented by a statue or an idol. That's what Muslims do. And when she said that, wallahi, it really touched my heart. It really made a lot of sense to me. I actually felt like, yeah, actually this makes a lot of sense. I really like that idea. Because to be honest with you, the only thing I knew about was, let me be honest, I knew about 2 things. I knew about Trinitarian Christianity, like the belief of the Trinity. So the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Honestly, it didn't make sense to me. And yes, you know, I say this on videos and Christians come and give me a hard time and they say, you didn't know about the Trinity and you didn't study it properly and you didn't ask people and all of that. But until today, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. And in the end, most Christians, when you speak to them, they will actually say to you that it's a matter of faith. Like it can't be understood you can't figure it out. It's just like accept it, that's what it is, that's how it is. So I'm not saying I was really up to date with the Bible. Like today, I would have said to them, well, if it's a matter of faith, how come your matter of faith is not even mentioned in your books of scripture? And it's not consistent between the different prophets. But in those days, it just didn't make sense to me. I just had a feeling that, look, to be quite honest with you, I don't really believe that God has 3 forms or 3 parts or 3 different beings. And like, that doesn't make any sense to me. The second thing I knew about was polytheism, like idol worship, like Hinduism and, you know, having all these different idols and that. Yeah, I knew about that, having all these different idols and things like that. And that also doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think realistically a person puts up. I'll tell you something that happened to me one time and it stuck in my mind. I was in a taxi in India and the taxi driver had a little plastic idol on the dashboard. Tiny, like about the size of my thumb. And every time he would hit a bump in the road, the idol would fall down. He had it with blue tack on the bottom, yeah? It would fall down. Wallahi, I saw it, wallahi al-azim, with my own eyes. It would fall down. Every time it fell, he would pick it up with respect and bow to it while driving. He would be like, you know? And you sort of sat there thinking, do I really have to explain to you that your God keeps falling off the dashboard? Are you really gonna now make dua to that God that he's gonna save you from the hellfire when the guy can't save himself from the bump in the road? Honestly, like, it doesn't make sense. It's just completely senseless. And yes, I've heard the explanations. I've had long discussions with Hindus tell me it's only a representation, it's only a portal to the higher being. But at the end of the day, the thing you bow to keeps falling over. You know, that's the end of it. There's no, you can say it's a representation, it's a portal, it's just a focus point for my prayer. But every time you bow down to it, the thing falls over. It can't even save itself. So that didn't make sense to me either. That was later, but I mean, the idea of it when I was 13, no, I was never gonna put plastic idols made in China and stick it on the wall and pray to it. Like, that was not gonna happen. I did believe in God, but I wasn't that much in favor of organized religion. I actually believed that a lot of organized religion was just there to control people and whatever. And here's a benefit, by the way. Why did I believe? Why was I not in favor of organized religion at that time? Because basically the only thing I knew about organized religion was the church. And you know, it is a corrupt institution. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna say openly, and I say these things on video, and then Christians come and say, how could you say the church is corrupt? But by and large, it is a corrupt institution. وَأَكْثَرُهُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, most of them are fasiqeen. How are you going to go, for the Catholics, how are you going to go into a confessional and say, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned, when that Father, Allahul Musta'an, he's done sins that are 10 times more than your sins. Khabith, fasiq. He's a filthy fasiq, and you're going to say to him, forgive me? Is very corrupt, wallahi, very, very corrupt. And if you study the history of the church in Europe, you will see how corrupt this institution is. Fasiqun. Fasiqun. Most of them, not all of them, some of them were sincere ubad, they wanted to worship God, but a lot of them were fasiqeen. Most of those people, like Allah told us, most of them were fasiqeen. And you see how they used to control the people and how they used to, you know, take the money for themselves, and how, and all their involvement in politics and all that stuff. Yeah, that didn't, you know, I believed that all religions would be like that. Because all of these religions had this human element, right? You had to go to the priest, you had to go to the vicar, you had to go to the, you know, whatever it is. And that person is gonna give you forgiveness, or that person is gonna purify you. So one of the things that really struck me in Islam was worshipping God alone, and one of the things that really struck me is going to God directly. In other words, your dua is to Allah directly. It's not to someone else, it's not to the priest, it's not for, you know, and wallahi, it saddens me, wallahi, to see that there are some Muslims that didn't understand this concept. That there are some Muslims who would go to the people in the grave and they would say, Yani, Ya Fulan, aghithni, help me. Ya Fulan, take my dua to Allah. I left that in Christianity. That's the same thing. Christians do the same thing. Saint worship, go to the grave of Saint Fulan and pray to the grave of, pray to the saint, this person's going to take your dua and all that. So that was already in my nafs, in the sense that I already, if you'd asked me and said, how many gods are there? I would have said, yeah, one God. I believe there is one God. And if you'd asked me, do you believe that you should pray to God directly or go to a saint or a statue? I would have said directly. I probably didn't think about it like that, but when I heard about it in Islam, it really was, I was like, yeah, I like that. I like that. One of the things that surprisingly, some people might be surprised about, really attracted me to Islam were the Islamic punishments, the Islamic rules and regulations. I think coming from a Christian background, especially a non-practicing Christian background, there's nothing haram. The only thing that is haram is things that you would call human decency, like don't murder somebody, you know, those kind of things. Yani. It's like the things which are basic human values. But there's no real rules. If you go to the vicar and say, can you know, what job should I not do? I don't think there's any job they would say you shouldn't do, especially now. It's getting worse and worse by the day. Yeah, and you read some of the things that the people say. Wallahi, the other day, I read what the Pope made a statement. And I'm not going to repeat, we don't need to repeat in the masjid what he said. There's no benefit in it. Like he made a statement allowing something. Wallahi, I never believed. I would have said that this is the level of their fisq. Yani that even the one thing they used to say was haram, today not haram. No problem. As long as somebody comes to the church, right? The churches are empty. As long as somebody comes to the church, it's allowed, it's okay, it's halal. But it's just, you know, it really, I wanted someone to tell me, do this, don't do this. This is haram, this is bad for you. And I want you to take a benefit from this. There is nothing that Allah made haram for you unless it has a reason for it. Allah does not make haram to make things hard for you. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرِ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرِ. Allah wants things to be easy for you, not difficult for you. Every single thing Allah made haram, He made it haram because it is bad for you. And it's going to hurt you in this world and in the next. I love that. I really like the punishments, the hudud. Yeah, I wanted to see like the hudud. Yani. I really liked it, the idea of Islamic punishments. Yeah, the hand of the thief. And to be honest, until today, I think a lot of people in England today, if they were being honest, should actually respect that. And say, today in England, what happens when you murder somebody? What happens if you stab a kid in the street? How many years are you going to be in prison for? La shay. Nothing. Yani they might give you a big sentence, looks like a big sentence, like 7 years, 8 years. 3 years later, the person out on the street again. Talk about the crimes against women, stealing people's property, torturing, you know, terrorizing people. You don't go to jail for even just a couple of years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you're out again. Like this to me doesn't make any sense. People literally destroy other people's lives and nothing happens to them. And you can see how it's going in the UK, that it's getting so bad that it's got to the point where you actually see crimes that you would have, let's say, for example, maybe 100 years ago, the person would have been hanged for it. And today they serve 4.5 years in prison. And that prison is also not that bad of an environment for them. And they go out and they do the same thing again. It's not helping anybody. And when I heard that Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاء, you people, these punishments, they give you life. They preserve your community. They make your place a place of safety. They stop people from committing crimes. Because if you think you're going to lose your hand because you stole something, trust me, you're going to think very carefully before you steal. Does the Sharia, is it the case that Allah Azza wa Jal wants everyone to lose their hand? It's not the case. But if there's no deterrent, you just don't stop doing things. And we've seen now the kind of crimes that take place, wallahi, it's like, we're living in that time the Prophet ﷺ spoke about al-harj. People just killing each other, they don't even know why they killed him. They kill the other person, he doesn't even know why I killed him for. He couldn't even explain. If you asked him, why did you kill this person? He doesn't even know why. Why did you ruin the life of this person? Why you drove your car over him, or why you did this, or why you did that? People destroy other people's lives because there's just no punishment. There's nothing that actually deters people from these kind of things. Or if it is, it's very, very small. So it really impressed me. Wallah, I listened to the Islamic punishments and I thought, you know what it is? I think the teacher would have thought it was negative. Like she would have thought that I would have been, people would have ran away from it. But actually I was really enthusiastic. I thought, you know what it is? That sounds like it would make a safe and happy society. It would make a society where people genuinely, really, honestly tried to stick within the limits. And I was happy with that. And that also is a benefit in da'wah. you should never be frightened to tell people what Islam really is. Because sometimes what people do is they try to sugarcoat it, but you don't understand the person actually wants to know the real Islam. You know, someone says, in your religion, do they punish people who commit adultery? Yes, they punish people who commit adultery. Because adultery ruins families, it ruins people's lives, it brings single mothers and single fathers, and kids grow up, they don't know who their dads are. Yes, it ruins people's lives. It destroys people's lives. Why should there not be a punishment for it? And marriage is easy in Islam. You know why Christians find this idea of punishment for adultery so bad? Because marriage for them is so complicated. That's why, when do they get married? When they're 35, you got married young. For them, marriage is so complicated. For us, marriage is so easy. So why would there not be a punishment for zina? So for me, I was happy. I thought, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. I'm happy with that. So that was another thing. Another thing that really, really attracted me about Islam, these are just some things that come in my mind that I heard about. I really, really liked the Brotherhood of Islam. And when I say the Brotherhood of Islam, I mean from two angles. Number one, I told you when I had those friends in the past, everyone was backstabbing everybody else. Everyone wants to cause harm to somebody else. There's no love. There's no care for each other. I really like the fact that Muslims genuinely love each other and care. They should, whether they do or they don't, but the fact that you have brotherhood. And I really like the fact that that brotherhood is irrespective of what you look like and where you come from. Because one of the things that I absolutely hated before Islam is, and I still hate it today, is I absolutely hate this jahiliyyah of racism and tribalism and all of these isms that are like this jahiliyyah, hamiyat al-jahiliyyah that people have. I hated it before I was Muslim. So I love the idea that in Islam, everyone is from Adam and Adam is from Turab. Everyone is from Adam. And that's it's a friend of mine. It's a lovely brother from Sudan. Very sweet brother, wallahi. I went on holiday with him one time. And you know how they give you a hard time. So it's me and him. He's from Sudan, I'm from England. So he lived in England for a long time. So we go to the passport desk together. We both got British passport. So I go to the passport desk. He says, where are you from? I said, England. Go ahead. He said to him, where are you from? He said, England. He says, born in England. He's got a British passport. He's like, you're not from England. He said, no, I'm from England. Look, see, British passport. I'm from England. He said, you're not from England. Where are you from? You don't look like you're from England. So in the end, he kept saying, where are you from? Where are you from? Until the guy said, Turab. I'm from dust. And what do you want me to say? For I really like this about Islam, wallahi. This brotherhood that doesn't differ between the people except on iman and taqwa. That's how it should be. And that really agreed with my nafs. It really did. And it really was something that, I was saying nafs, maybe I should say fitrah. It agreed with my fitrah. It was something, it made a lot of sense to me, and I liked it. And ultimately, Christianity, I felt, those things are like an afterthought. Like they tell you now that, oh, we should, all see everybody as equal in the eyes of God. But to be quite honest, that's not the case in many places around the world. And they didn't do a lot about it until very recently when they felt they had to. Does that make sense? Like I felt personally that for them, this is something that they paid lip service to, but they didn't really believe it. They didn't really, genuinely, truly believe that everyone is the same. Everyone is a brother. And that's why until today, maybe not so much in England, but you have churches belong to particular ethnicities and races and particular, even social status. You have churches where rich people go and churches where poor people go. We don't have this in Islam. And that's why, shall I tell you honestly, I do a lot of work, not a lot, but I do what I can in terms of explaining Islam to people. And the number one bit of feedback I get back from people is you all stand together in prayer. The thing that really impresses the non-Muslims, why you all stand together in prayer. Like as if you are just one. So I really like that idea of brotherhood. I did. I like the fact that Islam provided a narrative for the previous religions. What I mean by that is, if you look at Christianity, there's something amazing Allah says in the Quran. وَقَالَتِ الْيَهُودُ لَيْسَتِ النَّصَارَى عَلَى شَيْءٍ وَقَالَتِ النَّصَارَى لَيْسَتِ الْيَهُودُ عَلَى شَيْءٍ وَهُمْ يَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابِ. The Jews say Christians are misguided. And the Christians say the Jews are misguided. And both of them read the same scripture. You see what I mean? It doesn't make sense. Okay, Christians say that the Jews are misguided. So what happened before Jesus then? What was Jesus sent as? It doesn't make, like, there's no context. It's like their religion popped up and there was no haqq before and no haqq after. It's just like that. And the Jews are the same and all the other religions. Yani. But Islam actually explains from Adam until Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam a consistent explanation of where all those religions came from and the prophets came from and the scripture came from, and it makes sense. Otherwise, how can you believe in a religion that only came about 1400 years ago? Sah. How can you believe in a religion that just popped into existence 1400 years ago? Our religion didn't. Islam didn't come into existence 1400 years ago. Islam came into existence when Allah Azza wa Jal created Adam, and before that the angels that Allah Azza wa Jal created upon Islam. So there's a consistent story that makes sense. And another thing that really attracted me to Islam is the fact that generally Islam does make sense, and in two ways. Number one, it doesn't have contradictions in it. So, for example, one of the things, like we talked about the Trinity, right? So if you read the Old Testament of the Bible, it's all about one God. Hear, O Israel, your God is one God. You have no God except Him. It's one God. Don't make any partner. Don't make shirk. Shirk is very bad. Worship one God. You get to the New Testament and suddenly there's 3 gods and it's okay to worship all of them. It's not consistent, right? It doesn't make sense. How did we have one God, you can never make a partner, to 3 gods and you can worship all of them at one time? It never made any sense to me. That there's no, everything is, وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. If it was from other than Allah, you would have saw a lot of differences of opinion in it. And from the other side, the consistency, one thing is the fact that it didn't have contradictions in it. But also the consistency in terms of the fact that what I really liked about Islam, I liked the fact that Islam doesn't ask you to believe in something that is unreasonable to believe in. I'm not saying that Islam is judged by reason or logic or whatever, but I'm saying that Islam doesn't ask you to believe in something that is unreasonable. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he puts it this way. He says there is no contradiction between an authentic text and a sound intellect. And if your mind is uncorrupted by the thoughts of the other religions, if your heart is and your mind is not corrupted, you will not have any problem to accept the authentic text. It makes sense. There's nothing in it that, even science, even the physical world, there's nothing in Islam that feels out of date. This appealed to me so much. Islam feels like it's relevant today. Honestly, Christianity feels like it went out of fashion. That's how it felt to me. Like it doesn't feel relevant today. And that's why the only way they can make Christianity relevant today, the only way they can make it relevant is by watering it down. That's why the only way. That I believe that firmly. The only way they can make Christianity relevant today is by watering it and watering it and watering it until it becomes acceptable to the people. But Islam feels like it was sent down for today, just like it was sent down for 1400 years ago. It makes complete sense. It's practical. You can do it today. Another thing that really attracted me to Islam, which I really enjoyed, is the fact that Islam was practical, but it doesn't require you to give up the world. So if you talk about Christianity, when do you become really religious in Christianity? To be really, I mean like really, really religious, you have to give up the world, right? وَرَهْبَانِيَّةً ابْتَدِعُوهَا. You have to become a monk or a nun or a priest and give up, become celibate and, okay, maybe Church of England, but I told you they just water it down until now you can be anything you want. But the idea is to be really religious, you have to completely turn your back on the world. You can't have a business, you can't earn money, you can't be wealthy, you can't back on the world. I like the fact that Islam tells you, you don't have to turn your back on the world, but you can't make the world the most important thing to you. And that's why in the dua, which is reported from the Prophet ﷺ, what do we say? Allahumma la taj'al ad-dunya akbara hammi wa la mablagha ilmi. Oh Allah, don't make this world the biggest thing that I'm worried about, and don't make this world the only knowledge I have is all the knowledge of this world. Don't make me knowledgeable about this world and ignorant about the hereafter, and don't make me someone who my only worry is about the world. I'm not worried. Make me worried about the hereafter. So you come to the masjid and pray, but nobody locks themselves in the masjid all day and says, I'm not going to go to work and I'm not going to do anything beneficial and I'm not going to go out and help the people. I'm just going to sit in a room in the masjid and lock the door. Allah tells us in the Quran that this was not something Allah commanded them to do. They invented it. وَرَهْبَانِيَّةً ابْتَدِعُوهَا. They invented it. Allah never told them to do it. As for us, come for your prayers, come to the masjid, do your classes, do your durus, go work hard, provide for your family by the help of Allah. It's a practical, day-to-day religion. It's not a religion that's once a week. I love that about Islam. It's a religion that's every minute of your day. It's not even 5 times a day. Your religion is every minute of your day. And what I really loved about Islam, and maybe this is one of the last things I'll mention, is I really, really loved the fact that Islam is not secular. Judaism and Christianity have been destroyed by secularism. What is secularism? The separation of your personal religion from your daily life. In other words, your personal religion is what you do on a Saturday, what you do on a Sunday, what church you go to, that's your religion. But Monday to Friday, what you work, what you earn, how you live your life, that has nothing to do with religion. Some people say the separation of church and state. But more than that, it's the idea of that your religion is just a personal thing which is private, you do in the house, but when you walk out of the house, you are what we want you to be. You're not your religion anymore. And it's destroyed Christianity and Judaism as well. Secularism, people who don't practice, they just, when they walk out of the door, they're like everybody else. Yeah, and then maybe on a Sunday they become religious or whatever. Islam is every minute of every day. Everything you do, you're thinking, is it allowed? Is it not allowed? Should I do it? Should I not do it? And so on. What did Allah tell me? This really amazed me about Islam. So these things, as I came to learn them step by step, I didn't learn them all at once. I didn't learn them in one sitting. And I didn't jump up and say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. But over time, I started to change the way I felt about religion. I started to change the way that I felt about Islam. First of all, I noticed myself become really defensive about Islam. Like if someone would say something bad about Islam, I would be like, don't say something bad about Islam. Islam has good in it. You don't even know what Islam is. So I started becoming defending Islam. And then slowly I started to ask myself, if you feel so strongly about Islam being the truth, if you feel so strongly about Islam being the truth, does that not make you a Muslim? So maybe you should think about being a Muslim. So this was not something that happened. I mean, I can't even say how long it took. Maybe, I don't know, maybe 12 weeks, maybe a few months, I don't know. It took some time of coming to realize these things. Now someone might say, and a Christian once said this to me, as far as I recall, it was a Christian who said to me, but you never looked at the other arguments. Did you actually look at what people said against Islam, or you just drank the Kool-Aid? You know, like someone told you Islam is amazing and you were just like, yeah, Islam is amazing. No, I actually researched the bad things people say about Islam. I wanted to know there must be something bad about this religion. There must be something wrong. There must be something. And for a long time, I actually believed I would find it. I believed that, Islam's got good things, but it's going to have the same problems that other religions had. And wallahi, I came to a conclusion that all the problems people associate with Islam are two things. Number one, they are lies and false things that are not part of the religion. Yeah, that's the first thing. So someone is telling a lie about Islam and they are adding into Islam something that's not from it. Of course that thing is going to be bad. So there are lots of examples of this. A lot of cultural things people do, a lot of evil things people do who claim that it's part of the religion, but it's not part of the religion. So that's the first thing. So a lot of it, I crossed off the complaints. I said no, because I found that it's simply not a part of original Islam, right? The second thing is, it's a complaint against Muslims, not a complaint against Islam. So for example, Muslims cheat people. I agree. Some Muslims cheat people. Some Muslims lie. Some Muslims drink. Some Muslims don't pray. Some Muslims are secular. Some Muslims dot. Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything, right? I can find you some of the worst of the people that Allah has ever placed on this earth who were atheists. Any people who murdered hundreds of thousands of people, and they were atheists. People who murdered hundreds of thousands of people who are considered the evil people who have ever existed, and the most evil people, who were Christian. Doesn't say anything about Christianity, and it's just people. People are the problem. So the fact that some Muslims don't practice their religion, that doesn't really affect me that much. That's their problem. And if you turn away, Allah is going to replace you with a people other than you. Allah is going to replace you. That's that simple. If you are not practicing your religion, me, you, anyone else, and you turn away from your religion, Allah will get rid of you and bring someone in your place who will practice this religion. That's the reality of it. You don't have anything that says, I deserve to be a Muslim. Not me, not you. Doesn't matter what family, what background, what place, how long, how much knowledge, you do not have a guarantee of Islam. What you have is whatever Allah blessed you with and gave you as a gift, and if you turn away, Allah will replace you with somebody else. Allah will bring someone else in your place, and it doesn't bother or hurt Allah at all to take you and get rid of you and bring someone in your place who will worship Him alone. So I saw that what people said about Islam that is negative, it comes to two things. Either it's not really part of Islam, honestly, like it's cultural, or it's just a lie, or it's a problem with Muslims, not a problem with Islam. So I came to that conclusion. So I was like, right, I have to become Muslim now. How do I now become Muslim? So I searched it. We didn't actually have Google. That's how old I am. There was no Google in those days. There were some search engines though, and or at least if Google was probably there, but it wasn't popular like that. So we searched, how do I become Muslim? And it's interesting to see that search happens millions of times every month. Google keeps statistics about searches, how many searches a month. In the English language, last time I looked, there were in excess of 10 million searches a month. How do I become Muslim? Not to say that's 10 million people, but many people are searching all the time. How do I become Muslim? How do I accept Islam? How can I be Muslim? And similar to that. Millions of searches every month. So I searched. I got some answers. Some of them were right, some of them were wrong. The problem I got, and this is now the problem, is you want to become Muslim. But what happens? Now the Muslims start ruining it for you. Hadahumullah. Allah guide them, they start ruining things for you. They start giving you wrong information. So the first thing they said is, you can't be a Muslim unless you go to the masjid. In other words, unless you do your shahada in the masjid. So a miskeen guy was climbing a mountain, slipped, he's hanging one edge, hand off the cliff, he feels his life going away, but I'm sorry, you can't accept Islam unless you can manage for someone to pick you up and take you to the masjid and put a microphone in front of you. Jahil people. Wallahi, akhi, if you want to be jahil, no problem. But don't spread your jahil to other people. Don't spread that ignorance out to other people. You stop that person from accepting Islam because you told him you cannot accept Islam unless you stand in front of a crowd on Jumu'ah and speak in front of the microphone. Akhi, this is not Islam. The second thing they told me, you have to have 2 witnesses. So the guy hanging off the cliff is fine if someone else is hanging on the cliff with him. Or there's someone trying to rescue him from the top, he can be his witness. Who said 2 witnesses? Wallahi, this is just compound ignorance, wallahi. And until today, the reason I'm going to be harsh with this, I'm going to be rough with you, because until today I see the same thing with new Muslims. Wallah miskeen, the brother comes in and the people from the first day he accepts Islam, they start telling him wrong things in his ear. Not out of spite. Wallah, the person wants khair for him, but wallahi, he doesn't know. I just give a random example. So, new Muslim, nice brother. When I saw him, he had a full head of hair. I saw him 2 days later, he shaved all his hair off. He had his hair braided. His hair was braided to his head, in braids. The next day I see him, his hair's all shaved off. I say, Akhi, what happened? He said, Wallah, the brother told me it's haram. Ya Akhi, where did you get this? Wallahi, these people, what do they say? هذا حلال وهذا حرام ليفتروا على الله الكذب. They say this is halal and this is haram to make a lie against Allah. Akhi, why you tell the brother to shave his head off? Shave his hair, why? Wallah, we don't see anyone looks like that in our masjid. Habibi, you don't make your religion like that. Your religion is not like that. Your religion is قال الله وقال Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Bring a dalil, you bring a hadith, bring something. But just somebody doesn't know something, so he told him. This is just a simple example, but this happens all the time with new Muslims. Someone walks in the door, the number one thing I see these days, tattoos. Of course, we're living in a time where a lot of people have tattoos, right? The guy comes in, says, Akhi, can't pray. Type, what shall he do? Cut his skin off? We take a razor blade and skin him. Yani, what shall we do? The brother just became Muslim. Of course he can pray. What shall he do? Yani, he cannot, if he can remove it, alhamdulillah, go and remove it. Yani, better. But if you can't remove it, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Pray as you are. There's nothing wrong with who you are now. You've accepted Islam. Islam has wiped it out. Still, brothers, looking at making life hard for this brother because he came in and he has a tattoo on his arm or he has one on his hand. Wallah, if he had one on his face, I don't know what they would do to him. Why speak about something you don't know? Of course we know tattoos are haram. The Prophet ﷺ made it from the kaba'ir, from the major sins. But if somebody had that and then they accepted Islam, Islam wipes out what came before. If they can remove it, alhamdulillah, remove it. If they can cover it, alhamdulillah, cover it. But if you can't, fear Allah as much as you can. Do the best what you can. The other thing I saw, which happens to a lot of new Muslims, I'm going off on a tangent, and it is the person comes in and he gets told, for example, wudu. He's making wudu, it's like, Akhi, you're doing it wrong. It's like, okay, show me how to do it. So he starts doing it a different way. Someone else comes in and says, Akhi, you're doing it wrong. And by the time he's finished his wudu, 3 people told him that his wudu is wrong. Each of them is telling according to what they know. Instead of having somebody with knowledge, just help him in the first few days and get him to the stage where he knows what he's doing and what he's not doing. But this is important, wallahi. And this was something I faced when I first became Muslim. First of all, in the Shahada, I kind of messed up my Shahada a bit because I said it, I wrote the words down and I said it in front of my mum and dad. because I thought I had to have 2 witnesses, and I didn't know it has to be 2 Muslim men who are reliable, trustworthy in the courtroom and all that other stuff. I just thought any 2 people. So I went in front of my mom and dad and I read the Shahada. My mom said, "What's that?" I said, "It's Arabic, Mom. I found it online." I didn't tell her I accepted Islam. And it's another point I'm going to home to you. Why do you force a new Muslim to tell his parents on the first day? Did the Sahaba used to tell their parents on the first day? You want to know how many of the Sahaba in Mecca concealed their Islam? Wallah, you could kill a person. Wallah, no word of a lie. Alhamdulillah, my family was good, like a good, like sort of welcoming family. They didn't really have a big problem. But some people's family, you tell him, you have to go home and tell your parents. And maybe they'll beat him, maybe they kick him out of the house, maybe he live on the street, maybe he turn away from his religion. For the sisters, it's even worse. So don't be giving out fatwa like it's free. You wouldn't give out fatwa to another Muslim. Wallahi, you wouldn't. That Muslim comes in, he says, "Akhi, can you tell me how to make wudu?" Say, "Allahu alam, ask the Imam." The new Muslim comes in, "Of course, akhi, I show you, no problem." You can't, you have to take the person to a person of knowledge, because otherwise this person is going to make life decisions really going to hurt you. So the issue, I didn't tell my parents in the beginning. I told them after a few weeks. My mom kind of guessed, and I told them after a few weeks. But here I made a big mistake at this point. My big mistake was I didn't really know enough about Islam to explain it to them, but I tried to explain it anyway. So I didn't really have, I was a new Muslim, right? I was 14 years old. I didn't have a lot of knowledge to explain Islam to them. I didn't really know how to explain Islam to them. But I tried anyway. So I said a lot of wrong things, astaghfirullah, about Islam that was just mixed up in my head. I didn't really understand it. Like they were grilling me a bit, not too much, but they were like, "Well, why is it like this? Well, why do you do this? Why do you Muslims do this? So why is it like this? Why do you do that?" And I thought I had to have an answer for everything. So I was trying to give them answers like that. And I made a lot of mistakes, and I caused a lot of harm to my parents by the fact that I didn't give them a good image of Islam. To all the new Muslims, I would say, when you first tell your parents or your family about Islam, this is your golden opportunity to tell them really well and give them a really good impression of Islam and invite them to accept it. The second mistake I made, really big mistake with my parents, is that I didn't give them dawah from the first day. We came to an agreement. We made a truce. We signed a treaty, except without the signatures. We made a peace agreement between us. I don't preach to them. They don't preach to me. Peace. My mom said, "Look, we're not going to tell you to change your religion. If that's what you want to be, that's what you want to be. My advice is don't tell everyone about it. Maybe you want to change later, but okay, it's your religion, it's your choice." My mom said, "You're very, strong-willed person. If you want to do something, you just go ahead and do it anyway. So fine, it's your religion. But don't try to convert us. We won't try to convert you." You should never ever accept that statement. But I thought it was amazing at that time. I was little, 14. I thought it was great. I was like, "Yep, that is what I want. I will not try to convert you. You will not try to convert me. We're going to live at peace. I'm just going to pray in my room. I'm not going to show Islam to you, and you're not going to show Christianity to me." But there's no conversation then. There's no da'wah. And now trying to give da'wah is very hard. Because that agreement, every time you try and give da'wah, it's like, come on, man, look, one thing, we supported you when you were younger. We let you pray, we let you eat your halal meat, we did all that on one condition, that you were not gonna give us a hard time about becoming Muslim. So when you speak to us about Islam now, it becomes, it's a point of friction. I think for a few years we went through this like put your head in the sand like type of mode, where anytime Islam would get mentioned on the TV, everyone would rush for the remote, switch the remote off. But now my mom is very proud of me being a Muslim. She's not Muslim. أسأل الله عز وجل أن يهديها ويهدي أسرتي جميعا. We ask Allah to guide them. But she's very positive about Islam, and she will tell people, "My son is a Muslim. Yeah, he converted. He gives talks in the masjid," and she's very happy about that. But in those times, it was kind of just like, let's just all pretend that everything is completely normal. But they were very accommodating. Everything I asked them to do, they did. I said, "I don't want Christmas anymore." They were like, "Fine, no Christmas. No birthdays, okay." I was like, I want to eat halal meat, no problem, bring your meat. Already my dad is a vegetarian, so it was like, fine, another dietary requirement in the house, no problem. You can have your meat. I don't want to sit at the table with alcohol. My parents don't really drink, to be honest. Very, very little, extremely little. So they were like, fine, no alcohol on the table. Like, everything I asked them to do, wallahi, everything I asked them to do, they did. And they made it easy for me. They didn't make it hard for me. But not everyone has that. So you have to have that fiqh when dealing with a new Muslim to understand that not everyone comes from that same background. But one of the things I will say is, that is very easy for me, but it's very hard for da'wah. Da'wah actually is easier when you have confrontation, to be quite honest. Most of the time. Da'wah is easier when someone says, I don't believe what you're saying, I don't agree with it, and I'm like, and you get, yes, وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Argue with them in the way that is best. There's a bit of back and forward. That's generally easier to give da'wah. But it's harder on the person. They made it very easy for me, but that situation was very hard to give da'wah. Because the whole situation is based around, we respect you, you respect us, nobody talk about it, everyone's happy, we'll do whatever you say, just keep the peace. And that's very hard. Giving da'wah is very hard. But it was good for me in terms of personally, it was easy for me. After a few weeks, I told my friends, about 2 weeks, I told my friends, my Muslim friends, like obviously the non-Muslim friends, I just got rid of them. And that's what, to be honest, what you should do. My nasiha, if you're a new Muslim, you have non-Muslim friends, just get rid of them, wallahi. Generally speaking, I'm not saying like horribly, I'm not saying be horrible to them or tell them I don't want to see you ever again or get out of my face or something. Don't be like, but don't spend time with them anymore. Just distance yourself from them, give them da'wah, that's it. Because they're going to affect you. As-sahibu sahib. The person who's your friend is going to pull you. It's going to grab you and make you like them. Al-maru ala dini khalili. فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِلْ. A person is on the religion of their close friend. Everyone has to look at who is your close friend. So I got rid of the non-Muslim friends. My Muslim friends were not so practicing at that time. Like they would pray Jumu'ah when they were not at school, but they were not like very practicing. They were not praying 5 times a day and stuff. But they tried to help me a lot, wallah. They really tried. They tried their best. And they were very happy. When I told them about me becoming Muslim, they shared the news with their whole family. They took me into the living room. All the uncles and aunties, I didn't know what to say, what to do. I felt like extremely nervous. And I'm a person who, I generally don't like, the social gatherings and things like that. But they were very kind, wallah. They were extremely kind. And they really, really tried to explain. The problem is, فاقد الشيء لا يعطي. If you don't have something, you can't give it. It's a famous Arab proverb. If you don't have something, you can't give it. And if you don't know how to pray, how are you going to teach somebody how to pray? If you personally don't stick to the limits set by Allah, how are you going to tell people to stick to those limits? It doesn't work, even if you try. So they tried, wallah, they tried, and I kept good contact with some of them, and some of them became very practicing now, alhamdulillah. At that time, they struggled to help me because, to be honest, number one, they didn't know what it's like to be a new Muslim, so they didn't really know how to help me. And number two, they themselves were not really much practicing, so they didn't really know how to explain. The other thing is that they had a lot of cultural misconceptions. So most of my friends were from a Bangladeshi background at that time. And they had a lot of cultural stuff. So like for me, the first time I ever learned Arabic, it was like a proper Bengali madrasa. So you imagine me in this madrasa where I can't speak the language, the teacher doesn't speak English, that's the first thing, yeah? I'm learning Arabic, the teacher doesn't speak English. He explains everything in Bengali and Arabic, one or the other. I felt completely lost. And there was cultural expectations, what you wear, how you sit. I didn't know, so I just ran from that class. I attended it for 2-3 times, I couldn't attend anymore. Wallah, maybe he's a lovely sheikh, wallah, maybe I don't know anything about him, but the problem was that it didn't work for me. It's not that he was bad. He was serving his community. He was doing a good thing. I was like, what do I do here? They're like, shh, do this. He told you to write this on the pen. I'm like, what do I don't even know what to do. So it's important to provide new Muslims with, alhamdulillah, now it became much better. Like a lot of this stuff is back in the day. Now, mashallah, English is still the main medium in a lot of masajid, alhamdulillah. Like I went in Newcastle, we for a long time didn't have a masjid that gave a khutbah in English. You take your pick. You get Urdu, you get Bengali, you get Arabic, choose which one you like. But you're not getting in English. They were like, who does khutbah in English, man? There were no classes in English. There were no khutbah, there was no khutbah in English. There was one khutbah where the khatib used to give Arabic and then a bit of English afterwards. And obviously, a lot of the masajid were very cultural. Like, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Allah saved me, then He saved me, then He saved me again. Allah Azza wa Jal saved me because there was a masjid, and that masjid is a masjid upon shirk. And they worship the graves and all of that. But you know what put me off going in there? It was nothing to do with the worshiping the graves and nothing. It was the racism. Wallahi, look, it was the racism. I'll be honest with you. I walked in there and they just started. Oh, this guy, what's this guy doing here? He can't be Muslim. Look at him. They started. And Alhamdulillah, I ran from that place because they made me feel so horrible. Like the way they would talk about me, they would just refer to me as that white guy. That's it. Like I didn't have a name. I was just the white guy. That's it. And they would constantly stare at me and point at me, and they would even make circles around me when I would pray. Like if I would go to pray, is he praying? How does he pray? Why is he praying? How can he pray? How can he be Muslim? He's not even Pakistani. This is the mentality people used to have. They were really horrible to me, and Allah saved me because that masjid was upon bid'ah and shirk, and Allah saved me from it. Walillahi alhamd. And I didn't feel comfortable, so I started going to the masjid that was Arabic oriented, but I didn't feel comfortable also because they were very political. Every khutbah was about, every khutbah was about Palestine. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make it easy for the Muslims wherever they are in the world, mustada'afeen. That's not I don't mean to make light of that. Like in every khutbah, I didn't hear anything except that. We didn't hear tarbiyah, we just heard about the political situation, and we need to burn down the houses, and we need to go outside and take the flags and protest, and that's all I heard. And that was the little bit of English that we got. Of course, all the groups came along one after the other, the Shia, the Hizb al-Tahrir, you name, they all came along one after the other, come with us. Because when they see a new Muslim, and there's not that many new Muslims in Newcastle at that time, come with us. We're upon the haqq, they're upon the batil. So I went round all the groups, I've been round all of them. Tabligh, Hizb al-Tahrir, Ikhwan, the Jihadis, the Takfiris, I've been around all of them, one by one. We did a trip around the Muslim Aqidah. All of them. Political stuff, shirky stuff, bid'ah, all of it. And alhamdulillah, wallahi, Allah saved me from falling into a lot of things. But what it left me very confused. I felt really, truly lost. Because I left Christianity to get away from all of that sectarianism and batil and silliness that doesn't make sense. And I came into Islam and I found the same thing. The same thing, worse. And I'm going to say worse. And it is worse. The Prophet ﷺ said it's worse. He said that the Yahud will break into 71 groups. And the Nasara will break into 72 groups. And my ummah will break into 73 groups. All of them are in the fire except one. Whoever is upon what me and my companions are upon. So I was really confused. I went through, and you know what, one thing you'll say about a lot of these groups, most of them, not all of them, most of them, they don't make a lot of effort to teach you anything. They just want you to be with them. They want sawadul a'zam. We just want to be the big group of people. We want to see all the heads, everybody's head. We want to see the room with 1,000 people in it. But they don't make a lot of effort to teach you, and they don't make a lot of effort in actually practicing the religion. Not all of them, some of them do. I'm going to be honest, some of them do. But a lot of them don't. For example, I remember something profound stuck in my mind. I remember being in a gathering where I could see someone from Hizb al-Tahrir. And this is their sheikh. And wallahi al-azim, inni la uqsim billah, I'm not doing any dhulm to him. he handed out a cigarette to each one of his students, and he sparked up, and he said, brothers, we talk about the Khilafah. I'm like, Akhi, the Khilafah, you can't establish Sharia on your face, brother. Brother, your face has done a full-on rebellion against you. You can't establish Sharia here on your cheeks. How are you going to establish Sharia in a country? You can't establish Sharia in your masjid, in your house, in your back garden. How are you going to establish the Khilafah? And he sparked out and he's puffing away, telling the people how he's going to, we're going to establish the Sharia. I'm going to be the Amir al-Mu'mineen. Who wants to be? Wallahi. Who wants to be the wazir in charge of the Bayt al-Mal? No, he wasn't in the mosque. He wasn't in the mosque. They were in a cafe. Oh, Allah, they don't go to the masajid. He was in the cafe. And he's puffing away. And he's telling the people about how he's going to be the Amir al-Mu'mineen. These things, wallahi, it really, it affected me in a sense. It left me very lost and confused and very, feeling very uncomfortable. I didn't know what I wanted to be. And I'm not, I should say, I just said I want the Sunnah and no, I went through all different groups and memberships and cancelled this one. No, I'm not part of you today. I'm joining you today. Those are upon misguidance. We're upon kullu hizbin bima ladayhim farihun. Every one of them thinks they're upon the haqq. Until I actually came to London. And I came to London because I was going to Cambridge University to apply for a university place. So I was at that time, I might have been 17 probably, because I was going to just apply. I hadn't finished my A-levels. And I wanted to apply to read law. Wal'audhu billah. So I wanted to apply to read law. So I went to the university and I had an interview with the head of the faculty of law, and we had a good interview. We discussed about how I could join the university and what kind of grades I would need to get and all that stuff. Now, you can't really go, or at that time, there wasn't an easy way for me, I wasn't driving, to go from Newcastle to Cambridge. So I went via London. And in London, all I was doing is stopping off in London and taking a bus out from London. So what I did is I said, while I'm in London, let me go visit a masjid. And I just looked like, famous masjids in London or whatever. And I found Regent's Park Mosque. I thought, wow, it's right in the middle of the park. Let's go. I was nearby. And then let me just go see. So I went inside. And I don't know how I looked. I'm sure I was not dressed like a Muslim, that's for sure. I was definitely clean shaven. I'm sure thiyab were below the ankles. I was probably wearing ripped jeans and I don't know what. I was not dressed like a Muslim. And I went inside the masjid and there was an old man from Jordan. Later on I found he was from the students of Sheikh al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala. And he came and he took me and he didn't speak much English. And he said, Muslim. Because I didn't look like a Muslim. He said, Muslim? He said, Muslim, new Muslim. He said, 1 minute. He called his students to come and translate. And he said, Sheikh says, you might be a new Muslim and you're visited to our masjid. I said, yeah, I'm a visitor to the masjid. I don't, I'm just a new Muslim. He said, come and sit. So he had a place, he was sitting, he had an office in one building nearby or something like that. They took me to his office and they sat me down and the Sheikh explained a few things. And he said to me, is there anything I can help you with? Look at the difference when you ask a person of knowledge. He said, is there anything I can help you with? I said, Wallahi, Sheikh, I'm confused. Every one of these groups is telling me, and I've been through different groups and I'm with this one on one day and this one on the next, and I don't know what I am. And Wallahi gave me a very beautiful explanation in which he basically told me that what you need to do is to go back to originally how Islam is. Leave all of that stuff and go back to the Quran, the Sunnah, and what the Sahaba were upon as best you can. And he leave all those new ideas and this card carrying groups and be someone who tries to follow Quran and Sunnah, Sahaba. And he gave me books. So he gave me books, he gave me a little library, like about, I think 15 books, like as a set. And he said, take this and tapes. Tapes were like, some of the du'at and English-speaking du'at and the translating for the sheikhs and everything, the conferences that happen in the winter and things like that. He gave me the tapes. I'm saying tapes. Some of the kids are looking like, what's a tape? Like old cassettes. that you, never mind, Google it later. Not even an old-fashioned CD. Even I say CD, they're like, look at it, what's that? What we used to have like before everybody just played things on their phone. So they had like audio and everything, durus and stuff. And I didn't read it all straight away, but when I listened to it, it made a lot of sense to me. People said, look, you got to go back to the Quran, you got to go back to the Sunnah, you got to go back to what the Sahaba were upon, radiyallahu anhum wa ardahum. You've got to be somebody who tries to find the truth. You got to be someone who tries to study your religion and learn it properly and practice it. And that's what he told me. He didn't tell me to join any group. He didn't give me a name that you have to be this name or this label or whatever. But he gave me the fundamentals. I then came back, and this is an important lesson. I came back to Newcastle with my books. And I carried on with my job, with my work. And I carried on kind of the same as how I was before, a little bit improved, but still similar. And I met a group of brothers. And that group of brothers, they had recently left some of these different groups and come to the Sunnah. And they were practicing the Sunnah, Quran and Sunnah properly. And these brothers, they actually invited me and said to me, Tim, why don't you come to the masjid? I said, yeah, masajid, I've been to a few masajid and, I didn't really have a great experience. But they said, no, there's a new masjid. We've just opened it up. Come. And wallahi, it was everything I wanted. It was a masjid upon the Quran and Sunnah. It was a masjid that didn't have the cultural problems that the other masajid had. It was a masjid where the khutbah was delivered in English. It was a masjid that I just, from beginning to end, I was very happy there. Very, very happy, wallahi. And in that masjid, there were brothers who were good friends to me. People who actually were practicing more than me. People who were trying to, they had sabr with me. I wasn't Muhammad Tim. I wasn't Muhammad Tim that you see today. I was like, half 1 foot here, 1 foot there, struggling to practice. And they really had patience with me. And they helped me, they showed me, they corrected a lot of misconceptions I had. When I used to listen to speakers that were not good, they used to say very nicely, not in a horrible way, but they used to say, look, maybe this one is better. I'd be like, yeah, I've got that in my library. The Sheikh gave me that. That Sheikh, I've got his audio in my library. I'll go and get it. And I started to read and attach myself to knowledge. And the brothers, they said, look, Muhammad Tim, why don't you go and study your religion? I'm like, yeah, later. I wish I can study my religion. I want to study it now. But we didn't have that many options in Newcastle. There were some halaqat. There were some study circles. Some of the brothers started study circles, little. I think there was a brother who used to take Sheikh Muhammad Tim Humble's explanation of some, I think maybe Riyadh al-Salihin or something, and he used to just translate it and read it to the brothers in English. There was a few little, but there wasn't proper study circles and things. They said to me, why don't you study? I said, I want to study. And they said, look, why don't you think about applying to study abroad? I'd already looked into studying abroad. I saw madaris in South Africa, Egypt. I'd looked into it. And they said, look, why don't you go to Saudi? Like, why don't you go and they'll pay for you and take care of you? And I was like, oh, sounds great, but how do I apply? So I went through the process. I applied. Allah blessed me again and again by being accepted in that university and being able to learn Arabic and being able to learn something of the deen and to be able to come back and to share it with people. So for me, helping new Muslims is very, very important. And it's very important to learn. A lot of how I am today is based on those experiences, to be honest. Like, I'm very, very firm and very vocal in telling people to follow the Quran and the Sunnah. And you know that from me. I'm not somebody who sits on the fence. I tell people I don't care if nobody is with me in it. I'll be by myself. I'm quite happy. I was by myself from 14 to 18. So I'm more than happy. I don't mind. I'll be by myself if I have to. But I will keep telling people to hold on fast to the Quran and the Sunnah and what the Sahaba were upon. Because this is the haqq, and there is no other haqq except it. And all of the other firaq and the other ways, all of them are upon batil and dalal, misguidance and evil. And there's nothing good except what the Prophet ﷺ brought and the Sahaba transmitted from him. Sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So that makes a big difference to me. I'm very keen on, when I speak, trying to make things easy for people. I'm not the most knowledgeable person. There are more knowledgeable people can come and sit in front of you and give you duroos and teach you books and things. But one of the things I really try to do because of my experience is to try to make my classes easy for people. So people can understand it and they don't find it hard, because I know what it was like when I didn't understand anything. And one of the things that I'm very, very vocal about is fighting against these cultural misconceptions that people have, where people imported their culture against Islam. Now, don't get me wrong, Islam has no problem with people's culture. Islam didn't come to fight people's culture. But if your culture contradicts Islam, akhi, leave your culture at the door. We don't want it. If your culture contradicts Islam, Islam is what gets put ahead, not your culture. Doesn't matter how many of your fathers and grandfathers and whatever did it. Islam is the only thing we have. Islam is the only thing that unites us. What brings us together is the rope of Allah, the Quran and the Sunnah, the Deen, what the Sahaba were upon. That's what brings us together. لو أنفقت ما في الأرض جميعا ما ألفت بين قلوبهم ولكن الله ألف بينهم. If you spent everything in the earth, all the gold in the earth, to make people come together, they wouldn't come together. But it's Allah who brought us together. Something amazing, and I'll conclude with this before you can start there. And I took a long time, forgive me, akhi, wallah. I conclude with this. Wallahi, it's a very small statement. A statement of Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman, the secret keeper of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, Ya Rasulullah, kunna fi jahiliyatin wa shar. He said, O Messenger of Allah, we used to be a people who are in jahiliyah and evil. And then he continued and he asked him, Allah brought us this khair. So will there be evil after? But I just wanted that statement from him. We were a people in jahiliyah wa shar. And Allah brought us this khair. Allah brought us this deen. After we were upon ignorance and evil. So how can we crave to go back to that ignorance that Allah saved us from? أَفَحُكْمَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ يَبْغُونَ. Is it the ruling of Jahiliyyah these people want? Do you want to go back to the Jahil way that you used to be before? The evil that you used to be upon before? Allah. Islam is a gift from Allah Azza wa Jal. As Allah said, وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ حَبَّبَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْإِيمَانِ وَزَيَّنَهُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ وَكَرَّهَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْكُفْرَ وَالْفُسُوقَ وَالْعِصْيَانَ أُولَئِكَ هُمُ الرَّاشِدُونَ فَضْلًا مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَنِعْمَةً وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ حَكِيمٌ. Allah Azza wa Jal told us that He made us love Iman. And He made Iman beautiful to our hearts. And Allah made us hate to disbelief. And He made us hate to defy Him and to disobey Him. Those people are the rightly guided. And it's a grace from Allah and a blessing. And it's a grace, it's a blessing from Allah. It's not what you deserve. It's not what I deserve. It's a blessing that Allah gave us for us to be grateful. Wallahu alimun hakim, and Allah is the one who knows who to give that blessing to and is wise in who He gives that blessing to, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those are just a few things that I remember. If you've watched my story before, you might hear differences because, as I said, in 26 years is a long time. And we forget. And also, I remember different things at different times. And I don't always get the order right because it's hard to remember what you did it's hard to remember what you did yesterday, let alone what you did when you were 14, 26 years ago. Again, that is what I remember. Wallahu a'lam. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. فَتفضل أخي الكريم. And if you have some questions, thoughts, ideas, فوائد, ملاحظات, whatever you have, تفضل. Yeah. Yeah, I became an adult now. Wisdom of Allah Ustad. نسأل الله عز وجل ذلك.
Since your conversion, have you converted any of your nearest, dearest family, friends, my second question is, English speaking sheikhs, they're hard to come by. Born English, right? I can think of only 3 or 4, yourself and Wasim Kempson and Abdul Hakim Murad. Are there any more coming along that I don't know, I'm not aware of? Could you tell
No.
me about one or two?
So with regard to your first question, God bless you, with regard to people accepting Islam, in my immediate family, nobody accepted Islam yet. We're working on it, inshallah. We're very hopeful. We ask Allah to guide them. In terms of people further out than that, I would like to hope that I had some success with that. But ultimately, for me, I think it's more important that we ask, or like what I tend to ask myself is, how many of those people will benefit Yawm al-Qiyamah, and in the sense, how many of those people will stay in Islam or practice Islam, will get near to Allah, and that I don't know, but I would hope that some people accepted Islam, but from my nearest family, no. That's the first one. As for English du'at, there are many, wallahi. There are a lot, wallahi. I'm not good with names, I'll be honest with you, but there are a lot of people who accepted Islam, who are active in dawah. Proper sheikhs, I'm not a proper sheikh. No, wallah, they are. In Medina, we used to have, Allahumma barik, we used to have brothers around us, many people who converted from the people who were born in the UK and who were born outside of Islam and who accepted, born to non-Muslim parents who accepted Islam after that. Wallahi, there was a good number. My problem is I'm not a good person to ask because I'm not very, I'm like a social media Bedouin. I live in the desert when it comes to the internet and all that stuff. I try not to be involved in what's going on and all that stuff. So I'm not really that familiar about how many people are giving da'wah or not giving da'wah. But there are some very beloved brothers, who we see a lot, and those brothers are giving in the sense of they are teaching classes, they memorize the Quran, they memorize the Hadith, and so on. Lakin Allahu a'lamu bihim. Allah knows them better. I'm just not a good person to ask about it because I'm not great with telling you, listing people for you.
Remember those two names I've mentioned you.
Some of them, I've met some of them before. Like I said, alhamdulillah, one of the things that we have now that I've really seen has changed a lot is, first of all, much better provision for teaching people in the English language, and that benefits all of us, because most of us, not all of us, but I would say most of us in this masjid, English is our first language. Most people in this masjid. We would be most comfortable learning Islam to begin with in English. I'm not taking away from Arabic. We all need it. اللغة العربية من الدين. Arabic is from the religion. But what we would be, to start with, we need a doorway that is going to get us to learning in Arabic. And that has to be provision of durus and muhadarat in English. The second thing that is also very good is the large number of institutes around the world, not just in Saudi Arabia, all around the world, that accept people and teach them and provide scholarships and so on, where people are able to go and learn their religion and actually come back with some knowledge to benefit their communities. So I think the situation is much better. And there are people, surprisingly, long before me, who were active in da'wah, from those people who accepted Islam and were born to non-Muslim parents, and they became mashayikh and tulab ilm, alhamdulillah. No doubt, one thing we have to do a lot, ikhwani, we have to work hard for da'wah. We have to go out there and spread this message to our community, the people around us. Because first of all, that's their haqq upon us. You're living in this country, you chose to stay here. For whatever reason, you're born here, your parents born here, your grandparents, or maybe 20 generations. But you chose to be here in this country. The least you can do is to share Islam with people. That's the minimum. And I honestly, I'm not a one for da'wah on the park, corner of the park and all that stuff. That's not my thing. I'm not going to take away from the people who do it. I'm just not good at it. It's not my thing. But I really believe personal relationships and personal da'wah is so easy to do. You know, you meet somebody, your neighbor comes down and opens the door, or you know, somebody, you meet him in the street, or the person that, you know, you meet in the shop. It's really not difficult to just present a good image of Islam and say a few words to people about Islam, about your religion. Don't hide your religion from people. Try to share it with people, wallahi. Because if we can bring more, we all complain about the fasad in our country, right? All of us complain. Oh, there's so much haram, there's so much evil, there's so much, you know, things are going downhill. But wallahi, if we bring Islam to people, that's what will correct the people, right? What corrected the people in the time of the Sahaba? The Sahaba were upon Jahiliyyah. The Sahaba were upon killing each other and burying their children alive and all daughters alive and all of this stuff that was going on and worshipping idols. And they became upon that much goodness because of what Islam brought them. So we need to share Islam with the people. Even if you can't share it in a big way, share it in a small way. Just share it among, wallahi, I know a brother, I'm not going to mention his name. Like a brother, wallahi, a young brother. I think age-wise, I don't know how old he is, but he's like in his mid-teens, like maybe 14, 15. And he used to come to me and tell me the people he was giving da'wah to. Wallahi, the number of people that he gave da'wah to and it's like a 14-year-old kid, 15-year-old kid, that he gave da'wah to, and Allahu A'lam, a large number. And actively saying, yeah, this person, and I'm trying to tell this person about Islam, and try and tell that person about Islam. Wallah, if they can do it, why can we not do it? Just small conversations, maybe just with your neighbor. It doesn't have to be like you hold them and say, you know, I'm going to tell you about Islam, but just gently, like, you know, you have a religion? Or you might have seen me wearing this because I'm a Muslim. Do you know much about Islam? Or it could be a little conversation. I know a taxi driver who does the halal side of taxi driving, not the haram side. And I don't know how many tens and tens of people took shahada from the back of his taxi. And he's just driving in the taxi and he's just talking to them, driving them to the airport. It's like, oh, where are you going? Okay, you know, you're going to this country. It just starts a conversation. And a large number accepted Islam. And the third person I'm going to tell you about is an older uncle. Wallahi, I think the number of people who accepted Islam in the hundreds and hundreds of people accepted Islam from him. And he never goes to any street corner with a megaphone. He doesn't, literally all he does is just go, for example, to a little place that he knows on the coast, and he just walks up and down and talks to people. And he actually recently said to me, can you get me copies of the Quran? I said, yeah, of course I can get you copies of the Quran. How many do you need? He said, well, how long for? I said, okay, in a year, how many do you need? And he said something like 500. I was like, 500? In a year? He's like, yeah, that's how many people like I talk to, and I don't give it to anyone unless they're interested and ready to accept Islam. Or 300 or 400 or something, he said to me, 350, 400, like a big number, hundreds. Just goes to the corner, like just a coast. And he's just like a promenade where people walk up and down. And he just sits down on a chair and people sit next to him and he's just like, oh, you know, he's just uncle. Where are you from? What are you doing? How's everything? Yeah, it's nice weather today. Just talks to them about Islam. It gets Islam in there somehow. And like, why don't you become Muslim? You should think, you know, what can I ask you about your religion? Just little like conversation, just like organic, natural conversation that comes up. Now, I'm not saying it's anything bad if you can preach from the rooftops, alhamdulillah. Like, and all of us probably feel a bit nervous to do that. But like, why can't you just have, you know how many in a day, how many non-Muslims you come across? Many. This is my advice. Allah. Yes.
Thanks for the talk, and I just want to ask you what kind of advice you can give us that are coming to the next 10 days of the Hijjah. So what are the good deeds?
So yesterday I gave a whole talk on this topic. So would it be possible to say that the video is online on the because I don't want to like give you a short answer when I I didn't give you the proper, the proper thing. Lekin what I will say is the hadith of Abdullah ibn Abbas, in which the Prophet ﷺ told us, he said, ما من أيام العمل الصالح فيهن أحب إلى الله من هذه الأيام العشر. There is no days in which good deeds are more beloved to Allah than these 10 days of the Hijjah. So everyone has to work very, very hard to do as many good deeds as possible. Good deeds in terms of what people need, in terms of what's easy for you, and also good deeds in terms of the things that are specified, like fasting the day of Arafah and sacrificing on the day of Eid and so on. But I explained in a lot of detail in the talk, inshallah. Allah bless you. Barakallahu feekum. You can choose how you.
You mentioned asking Allah directly. For example, if I come across a sheikh and I say, make dua for me.
If you come across a sheikh, can you say, make dua for me? So this is what we call tawassul. And tawassul in Islam is divided into two types. Tawassul mashru' and tawassul mamnu'. There is a type of tawassul which is permissible. So tawassul means seeking and nearness, getting near. So getting your dua near to Allah. And there is a permissible way of doing it, and there is a haram way of doing it. All of the permissible ways of doing it are mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah. And from them is to ask someone who is hayyun hadir, alive and with you, to ask that person, make dua for me. But I will say that the Sahaba did not do it very often. And that should mean that we should not make it our habit, that we don't make dua for ourselves. Even so, the Sahaba went through many things, sickness and poverty, and rarely did they go to the Prophet ﷺ and say, make dua for me. They did, don't get me wrong, it's permissible, it's fine. But don't do it too often. Why? Because you stop making dua for yourself. You stop having that direct relationship with Allah, and you become someone who is just like, akhi, make dua for me. Akhi, make dua for yourself, first of all, and then I'll make dua for you. Yeah, the one where you take people to drink alcohol and to and from the clubs is haram. That's that simple. The halal one is the one where you don't take them to do haram. I'm not saying if you don't know where someone's going, bas. But when the app pops up and says, take me to the club at 11 o'clock at night, I think maybe they went to post a letter. La wallah. The bus doesn't go to any place. The bus just drives around a circle, right? Yeah, that's the person's fault, right? So if a bus drives around in a circle and somebody gets on it to do haram, that's their business. It's not your fault. Allahumma, unless your bus is designed for that, like the bus that only goes to the haram place. Like in the bus that drives around in a circle, a person, all they do is the people get on for whatever reason and leave for whatever reason. Even the taxi, someone says, take me to the town center, you don't know where they're going. Take me to this street, you don't know where they're going, no problem. Like when you know that they're going for haram, you cannot take them. وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. You don't cooperate upon sin and transgression. Before it used to be very hard, because before you couldn't tell. Like somebody can just get in the back of the taxi and then just say to you, take me to this place. So you had to look at them and judge, But now it became very easy, and the app tells you where they want to go and where they pick up from and where you're taking them, and take what is the best you can. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Do the best you can to stay within what is halal. Yes, Habibi. It's an excellent question. So sometimes in da'wah, you feel yourself get stuck because the person says, like they know about Islam, you've conveyed Islam to them. Because what is your job? As a da'iyah, what's your job? Al-balagh al-mubin. Convey clearly. That's your job. Your job is not to convert people, is not to guide people. Your job is convey your religion clearly. That's it. Give a clear message. Now, sometimes people, they get in a situation where they don't know what's stopping them. And especially Christians have this a lot, where they'll say like, I don't know what's stopping me. I'm looking into Islam, but I don't know what's stopping me. One of the things you already said, which you did, which is really good, is to actually directly ask the person, tell me what is the one thing that is stopping you from becoming Muslim today? What is it? One thing. Give me one thing that today, if this thing was not there, you would become Muslim. What is it? So if the person sometimes might give you a reason, so you can address the reason. If the person says, I don't know what's stopping me, or they might say, I want to research more. Research more, what you can do is, you've got to say to them, look, Islam is a religion that is never ending, it's deep. And you can never reach the end of it, not even in 1,000 years. So you're never ever going to get the point where you've studied everything. Instead, if you believe Islam is true, accept Islam now and study as you go on. But the way my default answer to people like that is to say to him, listen, I'll say to him that if you believe Islam is true, you owe it to yourself to accept Islam. If you say to me, I don't know if Islam is true, no problem, study more. I'll help you to know Islam is true. If you say to me, I don't believe Islam is true, I'm going to try to convince you. But if you say to me, you believe Islam is true, you owe it to yourself. You owe it to yourself to accept Islam. Because if you die and you don't accept Islam, you will not be from the people of paradise. That's the end result. You'll be from the people of the fire. That is how it is. Inna deena inda Allahi al-Islam. The only religion in the sight of Allah is Islam. So if you believe Islam is the truth, you have to accept it. So then ask him directly, do you believe Islam is the truth? Just give me a straight answer. Yes, no, or you don't know. If you say you don't know, I'm going to now start looking at what don't you know, and I'm going to try and help you through it. If you say to me no, I'm going to try to convince you. If you say to me yes, then really you've got to just convince them that there's nothing, that they're doing an injustice to themselves. They're doing it wrong to themselves not to accept Islam. And sometimes you can guess what's wrong with them. So sometimes you can say, is it your family? Like, is that why? Are you worried about what people will think? Because sometimes they just don't want to tell you. But also with Christians, one thing you'll see, especially if they were a bit practicing, is that a lot of times they're very symbolic in their worship. They're looking for a symbol and a sign. They're looking for like Islam to be written in the stars or something. Like they're looking for, like, look up in the sky and just see La ilaha illallah. Like they're looking for something like to say to them, you should go for it, a dream or a sign or a vision, because that's a lot of Christianity is like that. Like you get these kind of things about like the angel appeared and the, you know, like I had a vision of Jesus and that like called me to start, like this kind of stuff. So what you have to tell someone is that sign already came. That sign is there, it's already there for you. It's the Quran. The Quran, that is your sign. It's already came, it's there in front of you. Read it, that's your sign. But I think you can often guess with the person. Like try guessing a few things with him, like that you think it might be. Like, look, be honest, is it your family? And he might just open up and say, yeah, you know what it is, to be honest, it is my family. If it's his family, what you have to convince him is that you have to look after yourself first. That, yeah, no doubt, I'm not going to, and I never say to him it's going to be easy. I'll never say to him that, bro, look, it's going to be so easy for you. I'm going to say, look, I don't know how it's going to be. I don't know how they're going to react. But if you believe Islam is true, you can't put your family first. You can't be someone who gets thrown into hellfire because you wanted to keep your parents happy. Plus, if you're talking about people, people are never happy. I'll be honest, whatever you're going to do, people are going to hate you for it. That's how it is. Whatever you're going to say, whatever you're going to do, people are going to hate you for it. So you may as well do what pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I try like motivating them like that, guessing. Sometimes they just open up and they'll be honest and say. But don't leave them when they're like that, because they're just on the edge of accepting Islam. You just got to give them a push. Allah bless you, make it easy for you. Yes, Habib.
It's kind of an extension to what the brother said. So I've got a friend at work who used to be Muslim. So he left Islam. And his reasons were, for example, like him, you know, he felt a bit sort of outcasted by his family, some other reasons. And sort of, how do you deal with people who left Islam? How do you give them dawah to come back?
Very good. How do you deal with people who left Islam, and how do you give them da'wah? to come back. So I think the first thing you need to understand is that the reason people go astray, and I'm not talking about leaving Islam, but people go astray in general, can be divided into two things: shubuhat and shahawat. Shubuhat means they're confused. So they've got the wrong impression, maybe cultural ideas, maybe they've got like a Muslim treat them badly and they thought that's like a part of Islam, or they never got answers to their questions. I got, wallahi, many young people came to me who left Islam. And they said to me, we left Islam, and some of them, they never got answers to their questions. Like when they came and said, why do bad things happen? The Imam said, son, sit down and be quiet and don't ask questions. You know, and it settled in their heart. Those are doubts and confusion. The other reason is desires. So the person says, I'm not Muslim because I want to drink alcohol, or I want to be in a relationship outside of marriage, or I want to be, you know, gay, or whatever it is. Like the person has something that their nafs is calling them to, and they believe it's not compatible with Islam, and so they would rather leave Islam than leave that desire. When I first started talking to people who leave Islam, I used to believe that it was 90% shubuhat and 10% shahawat. I used to believe like 90% is confusion about the religion and 10% is desire. Wallahi, now I would swear by Allah that it's the other way around. 90% of it is desires. It's that they don't want to submit to Allah. And they'll give you shubuhat. Don't get me wrong, they'll put, or you know, Islam is barbaric, Islam doesn't do this, Islam doesn't respect women, Islam doesn't let you love who you want, Islam doesn't, they'll bring all that stuff. Like none of it is actually real. It's like atheists. Atheists are like that. They'll bring you so many things. In reality, he just wants someone to say that, look, Allah will answer your dua, Allah loves you, why you being, you know, that's the person, we are very emotional people. And so I used to meet with people and talk to them, and they bring me so many academic arguments and say to me like, the reason is because, you know, I believe that there's a verse 300 or verse 100 and something contradicts verse number 97. Be like, okay, go on, give me the verse. Answer it. Next verse. I believe because I don't believe the sunnah. I believe that I don't believe we should take what people say. And all of this. And then ultimately when you drill down to it, say, I made dua and Allah didn't answer my dua and then I left Islam. That's when you drill down to it. It's an emotional reaction. Because ultimately Islam is very logical and very rational. So somebody, when they leave it, they have to be irrational. They have to have something that doesn't make sense. But when you meet them, they're going to be a mix of those two things. They're not going to be just one. He's not going to say like, oh, I left Islam because I want to have a girlfriend. Like, it's not likely. Or these days, Allahumma musta'an. But actually, it's more likely that the person will bring you like, oh, I left Islam because this ayah contradicts this ayah, and I want to have a girlfriend. Like, it's all mixed in all together. So you got to kind of start pulling it apart bit by bit. Never ever get defensive. Never sweeten it for them. I'm not going to sweeten it for you. You're going to Jahannam unless you change yourself. But you can change. There is a way back to you. You can accept Islam again. You can correct yourself and you can be a good Muslim. And you can sort your religion out and get your knowledge properly. So I'm going to say to him that, be honest with you, I'll answer your shubuhat, but I want to know the real reason. I want to know the real reason. Don't give me this verse 300 and whatever, 100 and what this, don't give me that. It's not the real reason. Tell me the real reason. I want to get deep down inside. Tell me the story of how you left Islam. And a lot of them were involved in a shahwa, a desire. That desire led them to want to stop practicing, and stopping practicing led them to justify it. So it often goes like that. There was a desire they had. That desire that they had led them to stop practicing. Stopping practicing led them to then justify why they're not practicing. Because someone's going to say, you're not practicing. And he's going to say, yeah, but I'm not practicing because of verse 97. Like, do you see what I mean? That came after the person left Islam because they don't want to practice anymore. So you have to honestly just start to unravel those issues bit by bit by bit. Give them solutions, answer their questions, but don't get on the defensive. Like sometimes I get like that. I speak to them and it's just ping pong, you know. I answer one verse, the next guy brings in the next verse and he's not listening. He's not interested in the haqq. I give him, he says, this ayah contradicts this ayah. I said, okay, I'll explain it to you. I explained it to him. He's like, yeah, but, well, I don't mind about that. I don't agree about, and he goes on to something else and something else. After a while, I'm going to say to him, Akhi, listen, be honest with yourself. You're not being honest, because every time I'm answering you, you're running away and bringing me something else. And it's not because you have a doubt about the truth of Islam. What is really going on with you? What happened? Have you tried making dua? And I'll say to them, make dua. Even now, as a murtad, an apostate, raise your hands and say, oh Allah, guide me. Perhaps Allah will answer your dua and guide you back to Islam. So I think it's a little bit, that's the process. But what I would say is don't get caught up in all the doubts, just responding all the time. Because honestly, whenever I do it, it doesn't end. The person said, I've got this doubt. I said, that's the reason you left Islam. He said, that's the reason I left Islam. So if I answer this doubt for you, you'll enter Islam again. Yeah, I'll enter Islam again. Okay, answered. 5 minutes, there you go. No, well, that's not the real doubt, because I've got other doubts. Yeah, the person doesn't want to engage with you. I'm not going to keep going. I'm going to say to him, listen, I'm not going to go around with you on all of your back and forward that you have, because you're not being honest with me. You're telling me it's because of this, this, and this, and it's not. There's something else. What's going on in your life? And a lot of them, shahawat. This guy's got himself into some stuff that he shouldn't be, and he's got himself far away from Allah, and he stopped praying, stopped making dua, got into haram. And then people put into his head why Islam is not true. I will answer a few of them, but I won't answer forever and ever. After a while, I'm going to say to him, you're not being sincere with me. If you're going to be sincere with me, come back and actually be sincere and be honest that this is nothing to do with it. What's the real reason? And sometimes he'll say it, like you get down to it, the real reason is ajib. Well, I've had all kinds of real reasons. And one guy, relationships, one guy because his dua wasn't answered, one guy because his mom died, and he doesn't, how could Allah allow it to happen? All this type of stuff, emotional arguments. And when they admit that it's emotional, show them that there's a way back. Show them there's an emotion that is bigger than that. How bad you're feeling, whatever, it's not making you happy. Come back. And make sure they know there's a way back. I never leave them. If I say to them, I'll be honest, I say to them, look, I'm not going to message you anymore because you're not being reasonable with me. But I want you to know that as soon as you're willing to be reasonable and you're willing to be fair and just, wallahi, I'm here. Just message me again. And sometimes they message and sometimes they don't. That's what Allah made easy. Allah knows best. Wallahi, it's a lot of questions. We'll go for the brother had for a long time. Yes, Habib, tafadhal.
So my question is maybe one or two questions. What and what good deeds do you advise just for your
Yeah. I'm going to answer you in terms of what dua. I'm going to answer you with the answer of the Prophet ﷺ to this question by his actions. Two Sahaba narrated the dua the Prophet ﷺ made the most, Anas and Aisha radiyallahu anhum. As for Aisha, if I'm not mistaken, she narrated the dua, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. O turner of the hearts, keep my heart firm on your religion. Time of fitan, time of shubuhat, shahawat, confusion, misguidance, being lost, temptations. Every time you make sajda, if you can, after you say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, say Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. O turner of the hearts, make my heart firm on your religion. And the dua that Anas narrated, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't get it the wrong way around. The dua that Anas narrated is رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. And this, honestly, these are the two dua the Prophet ﷺ made the most, all the time. There are many personally I love. And for example, I love the dua, Allahumma ati nafsi taqwaha wa zakkiha anta khayru man zakkaha anta waliyuha wa mawlaha. That, oh Allah, give my soul its taqwa and purify my soul. You're the best of those who purify it, and You are the one that we entrust and the one we rely upon to purify ourselves. It's a beautiful dua. But the two the Prophet ﷺ made the most, يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلبي على دينك ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. The second part you asked me about dua and about a good deed. Yeah, the one good deed. No doubt the prayer everyone knows about. The Prophet ﷺ said, العهد الذي بيننا وبينهم الصلاة فمن تركها فقد كفر. The difference between us and them is the prayer. Whoever leaves it has disbelieved. But I would say honestly that if I was to give you again the advice of the Prophet ﷺ about one good deed you can do, don't let your tongue ever stop remembering Allah. Because if you can be someone, that's what, when he would, that is the advice that when people say, look, I can't even pray, even my prayers are not right. Say, wallahi, let your tongue not stop remembering Allah. It will bring you back to the prayer. It will bring you back to goodness. It will bring you forgiveness. It will bring you everything good. Comes from dhikrullah, remembering Allah. And no doubt the prayer is a part of that. It's not separate, it's a part of it. But I would say in the base, at the foundation, never ever stop remembering Allah. If you can be even someone, even if you did the worst thing a person can do, and you came back and said, Rabbi ghfir li dhanbi, my Lord forgive this sin of mine, Allah would forgive you. For a person, I believe, just make your tongue constantly remember Allah. The best of dhikr is the Quran. The best of dhikr is the Quran. But if you can say istighfar, istighfar brings you the best of this world and the next. فَقُلْتُ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا وَيُمْدِدْكُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَبَنِينَ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ أَنْهَارًا. Children, money, rivers, gardens, all because of, that's in the dunya when you make istighfar. فَمَا بَالُكَ بِالْآخِرَةِ. What do you think about the akhirah? If in the dunya you get money and children and gardens and rivers for istighfar, what do you get in the akhirah? More than that. A person, keep yourself remembering Allah with different types of adhkar, but especially the Quran. This Quran is the everlasting miracle. It's the one thing that we have. Every prophet, their miracles came and went, except the Quran. Everything. All the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ, the moon split and the water coming between his fingers and all the miracles that he did, everything, we didn't see it. We didn't see any of it except the Quran. That's the everlasting miracle that Allah sent down until every Muslim leaves this earth. Allah sent us that Quran. So keep to it, remember it, think about it, read it. And then of course don't leave your salah. The salah is the difference between the Muslim and the non-Muslim. Let's see, I'm just trying to go from different places of the room. Yes, Habib. Fikum barakallah.
I know you currently teach, especially as a focus on Ruqya. You mentioned many reasons why you picked it. I just wanted to ask anything from your youth that of interest sparked.
That's a really good question. My interest in Ruqya. So let me tell you what I do right now. Right now, I'm a teacher at Al-Madrasatul Umariyah, AMAU. And if you're interested in that, you can just, in YouTube, you can just type in AMAU or Instagram, whatever. AMAU, and you'll find myself and Ustad Abdurrahman Hassan. This is our institute that we teach at. I have an interest in Ruqya, a personal interest in Ruqya al-Shari'ah. It's interesting you asked me, is there something in my youth that got me interested in it? I didn't know about it, but I do now. That actually my grandfather on my mother's side became religious because he had interaction with the jinn. And I didn't know about that, so it wasn't the reason I got interested in Ruqya. But later on, I asked my mom, like, how did granddad become like religious like that? Like, he became Jehovah's Witness and he stopped doing a lot of things that he used to do that were bad, and he started like, you know, being very serious about religion, and even he made his family kind of run away from him because it's a very extreme kind of like belief, and he pushed them away. But I said, what happened? And I don't know what she said he did, but he did something. I don't think it was a Ouija board, but it was something he did where he had a run-in with the jinn and he became possessed. And a man was in his workplace who was a Jehovah's Witness who said, the only cure for this jinn possession you have is for you to start practicing and worship God and all of that. So he became practicing because of that. I didn't know anything about that, so that didn't really have an impact on me, but I found about it later on. For me, what got me interested in Ruqya is the need. I was interested in it like everyone's interested in it, right? Like the unseen is interesting. But what really got me interested in it was the need of people. Like somebody came to me, they brought me a case. They said, look, you're a student, you're in Medina right now. Can you help us with this case? I was like, I don't even know what to do. But you're a student, you have to know. So I went and I researched it and I got interested in it. It's very interesting. And I believe, wallahi, it's a very, very worthwhile thing to learn. First of all, because the Prophet ﷺ said, مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ مِنْكُمْ أَنْ يَنْفَعَ أَخَاهُ فَلْيَفْعَلْ. Whoever of you is able to help your brother, let him do so, any with Ruqya. Also, it shows you a lot of the signs of Allah that you wouldn't otherwise see. Like you see the effect of the jinn upon the people, you see things that are min khawariq al-ada, things that are like not in the normal, like paranormal. You see things that are paranormal, that are extremely unusual, and it raises your iman. You see the effect of the Quran upon the person, you see the power of Allah's speech and dua, and it has a big effect on a person. So I think it's a very, very praiseworthy thing to learn. And if people are interested in learning it and they would like to learn more, I do have a course. It's not on Al-Madrasatul Umariyah, although there is a small one there. The main course that I have is on Teachable. So you'd have to search in Google, Teachable Muhammad Tim, and it should come up. There's a Ruqya course. Like, it's much better than the YouTube one. It's like proper. I think I did like 11 weeks of content and structured and everything. So, inshallah ta'ala, you can learn from there, inshallah. Yes, Habib. Assalamu alaikum. So very good. So in a workplace where you have very learned people who might have studied philosophy, people who have got knowledge and maybe doubts and questions, how do you approach that with da'wah if you feel that you might struggle to answer them? So I think there are three things I would like to kind of answer, three ways I would like to answer that question. The first thing is that the Prophet ﷺ said, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. Transmit from me even if it's only one ayah. And what's profound about this is transmitting the Quran and Sunnah is a guaranteed success for you. And if you're transmitting your own opinions, you're going to find it hard to defeat a philosopher because they've studied and they've got knowledge about how to argue with people and how to make you trip up. But if you answer with the Quran and Sunnah, you can't possibly go wrong. You've conveyed. So I would always answer with the Quran. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and I always use that in da'wah now. I changed. I used to try to give da'wah very, like myself, try to explain to people, this is Islam. Now I just say to people, I'm going to give you a copy of the Quran. I'm going to highlight for you some things I think you'll be interested in. Take it, read it. Because I really believe that there's nothing I can say that is going to be better than what they are going to find in the translation of the Quran, let alone the Quran itself. With regard to the second point is definitely don't answer when you don't know. If they ask you a question, be honest. And it doesn't take anything away from Islam. To say, honestly, I'm not sure how to answer your question, and I definitely don't want to give you a false answer. Let me find out and come back to you. In the beginning, a person might have a lot of pride and look down and say, see, you don't even have answers. But over time, they will learn to respect you for it. So don't answer straight away. As for them being learned people, you do have to be prepared for it. Because when the Prophet ﷺ sent Mu'adh to Yemen, he said, إِنَّكَ تَأْتِي قَوْمًا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ فَلْيَكُنْ أَوَّلَ مَا تَدْعُوهُمْ إِلَيْهِ شَهَادَةَ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ الْحَدِيث. He said, you're going to a people of the book. So let the first thing that you call them to be to testify there is no God worthy of worship except Allah. So what did he do? He prepared Mu'adh. You're going to Ahl Kitab. You're not going to the idol worshippers. Ahl Kitab, these are clever people. These are people who've studied, they have scripture. So be prepared for it. So I think it's not about you being the same as them, because you don't need to compete with them. It's not a philosophy discussion. You're going to talk to them about conveying the Quran and Sunnah. But you do need to be prepared that they're not going to be like a regular person who's not going to ask and question. But also always remember that the truth is very, very sweet. Wallahi, the truth is sweet. And philosophy in general is very bitter. Even in Islam, even Islamic philosophy does not really exist, but like ilm al-kalam is very bitter. You know, it doesn't nurture anything in the heart. Wallahi, it brings nothing in the heart except nifaq, hypocrisy. It doesn't bring anything good. It's very bitter, very hard on the nafs. It doesn't make sense. It's very confusing. Whereas when you bring someone Islam, the simplicity and the ease of it and the truth of it will come through. And it's not your job to guide them, it's just your job to convey. So I would say, try to present more of the Quran, be prepared. If you don't know, say I don't know, go back and get the answer. And remember that the truth itself is sweet. And sometimes people you would think would never accept Islam, those people realize. Because if you look at the people, the Muslims who got involved in philosophy, most of them, before they died, they repented. And they repented and they said how empty they felt from their study of philosophy and how it never really answered anything for them. It made them look good, made them look clever, but it never really answered. From the people who felt this way, Al-Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, Fakhr al-Din al-Razi, also repented from it. And others, among famous people who were involved in that. They repented from it and they told the people that there's nothing, this left us empty, it left us with no connection to Allah. So sometimes that connection to Allah, they can't find it in the knowledge they have. They find it in the connection of the heart, this idea of calling upon Allah and praising Allah. But I would say that's how I would try to answer that one, and Allah knows best. Barakallahu feek.
Sheikh, there's one question I have.
Yes, Habib.
You mentioned
You're allowed to ask one, it's okay.
You mentioned you read some books the Sheikh gave you. Which books would you recommend for a new Muslim or someone who's newly practicing to go through so that they can stay firm
Very
in their
good.
religion?
So first of all, I think this is an excellent question about books. And the books available today are so much better than what was available when I became Muslim. So much better. But let's talk about building a little library for a new Muslim or a newly practicing Muslim. The first thing that you're going to need, obviously, is your copy of the Mus'haf. That is a given, right? You have to have your personal copy of the Quran, the Mus'haf. It's the one that you feel comfortable with. You can't mix and match. You can't take someone else's Mus'haf because you need one that you can read in it and it's consistent for you. That's number one. Number two, a good translation of the tafsir of the Quran. So what I would suggest for a new Muslim is just a simple translation, not like a tafsir of anything, but just maybe a simple translation. I don't know, I've seen a few, and there are newer ones, but the one that I usually give to people is maybe like Sahih International or the derivatives of it, like the Quran Project and things like that. Those are the ones I usually give to people. Quran Project is very good. I really like it. I like the way that it's laid out and things like that. There are others that people suggested, like I have some issues over the Aqidah issues in it, like Asma wa Sifat and things like that. The third thing, if I was to give you your first book of tafsir, get the tafsir of As-Sa'di, rahimahullah ta'ala, tafsir As-Sa'di. Now, tafsir As-Sa'di is published by Dar es-Salam in full. It's not by not by Dar es-Salam. It's published by a publishing house in America in full. But the full tafsir As-Sa'di, it is also Dar es-Salam did it as well. It's huge and it's expensive. I think it's maybe over £100. So to start with, Dar es Salaam have got a 2-volume, I think, Tafsir al-Sa'di, which is like Al-Fatiha and Juz Amma and Juz Tabarak, and maybe the first half of Surah Baqarah, something. It's like a few small juz, and it's cheap. It's like, I don't know, whatever it is, like a few pounds, £5-6. Get that one, not the big one. The big one's brilliant, but the problem is it's expensive. Like, not a lot of people could say they can just go ahead and spend like £150 or £170 and buy like the 10-volume. Maybe just spend £5-6 and buy the small ones. Tafsir al-Sa'di. This is in Quran, Mus'haf, translation, simple tafsir. Later on you can go for a summarized tafsir ibn Kathir, but it's too hard to begin with. After that, what would I recommend? In hadith, I would recommend that you get the 40 hadith of Al-Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, with the additions of Ibn Rajab. But now that is so small, it's not available in a book. But what is available in a book is the explanation of it, which is Jami' al-Ulum wal-Hikam by Ibn Rajab. And I don't know what it's called in English, but it's Ibn Rajab's explanation of the 40 hadith. It might be called something like a compendium of wisdom and knowledge or something like that, but basically look at Ibn Rajab's explanation of the 40 hadith. Get yourself a copy of Bulugh al-Maram. Bulugh al-Maram by Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar in hadith. These are little books. Each one is like, not more than maybe less than £10 easily, inshallah. So small books. A Mus'haf, a good translation of the Quran, of the meaning of the Quran. Tafsir al-Sa'di, the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi, the explanation of Ibn Rajab, and Bulugh al-Maram. What is that going to give you? Quran and hadith, that's going to give you. Okay? Bulugh al-Maram is going to give you the rulings of halal and haram. You're going to need explanation of it, no doubt. But even just being able to read the basic hadith about what's allowed and what's not allowed is going to help you a lot. In Aqeedah, there is a lot to choose from. A lot. There's a lot of very good books. But probably what I would look for is I would look for a general book of Aqeedah to start with, which is very simplified. And there's so many to choose from. Wallah, I don't even know how to even recommend one. Like there's so many to choose from. But I would look for a well-known author and look for a summarized book of Aqeedah. So something which gives you a very nice summary of the Muslim belief without too much detail. And I mean, Sheikh Salih Fawzan has one. It's called in Arabic Al-Irshad ila Sahih al-I'tiqad, something like that. Guidance to the correct Aqeedah. I'm sure they have one from Sheikh bin Baz, rahimahullah ta'ala. There's like well-known mashayikh. Get yourself a good basic book of Aqeedah from a reliable source. If you go to the reliable bookshops that only have books according to Quran and Sunnah, you find a nice general book of Aqeedah, which is just an overview of what a Muslim should believe. After that, I think a good explanation of Kitab al-Tawheed. A good explanation of Kitab al-Tawheed. Because honestly, worshipping Allah alone is the most important thing in this religion. So again, there are many to choose from. There are about, I think, at least 5-6 published explanations. Pick a one that you find easy to understand, but a good explanation of Kitab al-Tawheed, the book of Tawheed. That gives us a good base in Aqeedah. After that, if we're looking about fiqh, because we're talking about building a library, if we're looking about fiqh, and having a library of fiqh books, it depends on the madhab that is available to you, right? So, I mean, generally, if you just a general book, I would say there is a book called A Summary of Islamic Jurisprudence by Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan. It's broadly according to the Hanbali madhab. Lakin if you are in a masjid where most people are teaching Shafi'i fiqh, you should try to find a basic book of Shafi'i fiqh as well. Because why? It just makes it easier to learn. It's not that one is right and the other one is wrong, but it makes it, if your masjid is teaching Shafi'i fiqh like regularly and your teacher is teaching it, it doesn't make sense for you to get a summary of Islamic jurisprudence and then go, you're like everything is mixed up. It makes sense for them to give you like, Matan Abi Shuja' or something like that. Good explanation of Shafi'i fiqh. In terms of general small books to benefit you, there are lots. I would say again, it's more important than books is where to buy a book from. If you can find a reliable bookshop locally or on the internet that only stocks books according to the Sunnah, generally speaking, then there's a lot of small titles about worship. There's a very nice one, Sheikh Abdul Razak al-Badr. He has first of all, Sheikh Abdul Muhsin al-Badr. He has the explanation of the hadith of Jibreel. It's very, very good. It's published in English. Explanation of the hadith of Jibreel. Also Sheikh Abdul Razak al-Badr, everything. Just take anything that's translated from Sheikh Abdul Razak al-Badr, take it. All of it. Every single one of them. It's very easy to understand. It's very, very important, and it's really, really relevant for new Muslims. After that, if you wanted to keep going a bit, I would say to get a copy of Sahih Muslim, because Sahih Muslim is better organized than Sahih al-Bukhari. Sahih al-Bukhari is amazing, but it's a little hard for you to access it as a new Muslim. It's a bit kind of like al-Bukhari puts things in very unusual places, whereas Sahih Muslim is kind of like wudu is in the beginning and like, salah is after that, and then zakah is after. It's like the organization is easy to find all the hadith together in one place and things like that. So I would say a summary of Sahih Muslim. If you can't get the whole one, get the summarized, just 2 volumes. Summary of Sahih Muslim. It's good just to have something to attach yourself to the Quran and to the Sunnah. Other than that, there are some amazing books. I would highly recommend the books translated of Ibn Rajab, the books of Ibn al-Qayyim, the books of Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahumullah ta'ala. But these books are at varying levels. Like some of them are easy, some of them are hard. So I would say like the books that I suggested in the beginning, to build a little library for yourself that will inshallah help you to go forward. It's difficult for me to remember in English. In Arabic I can give you like this beginning to end, but in English it's a bit hard. But we started making a list, you and I together, right? Did I not send you a list of books before? A long time ago. I have a list which I'm starting to put together, and I will try to share it with you, and you can share it with the brothers inshallah, of like English books that I would recommend people to start off buying. But it is important not just to buy according to your desires. Like free reading, everyone loves it. Oh, there's a book about the jinn. Oh, I love to read that. MashaAllah, brilliant. But it's not gonna advance you that far in terms of your Islamic knowledge. It's better that you try and have a little bit of tafsir, a little bit of hadith, a little bit of fiqh, a little bit of seerah. When the moon split, or the sealed nectar for seerah. Try and have like a little bit of seerah, a little bit of, and you go like that inshallah. So it will help you more to be able to become strong in your knowledge inshallah, rather than just taking the books that you like to read, which is good. I mean, free reading is great. I mean, I have a whole shelf of books that I just like to read, like things, oh, that looks really interesting, or this is about khushu in the prayer, this is about this is about the rulings of new Muslims in the West, and like there's interesting stuff. Like what you want to do is try and build up subject by subject a little mini library of books that will make it easy for you, and books that will benefit you in the long run inshallah. Before that, I'm going to come to your question, Habibi, Allah yabarak feek. What's really important is when you are reading a book and you come across something that doesn't make sense to you, you must ask about it. And it might be it doesn't make sense because you don't understand it, or it might be it doesn't make sense because it contradicts something you've already heard from someone else. So underline it, bring it to the masjid, speak to the imam. I was reading this book and I saw this hadith, but in the khutbah I remember you saying that it's not allowed to do this, but this hadith says that it is. Could you just explain it to me? So they explain it to you, otherwise you can get very confused. There's a famous statement the early generations, they used to say, Man kana شيخه كتابه كان خطأه أكثر من صوابه. Whoever's sheikh is his book, he's going to be wrong more times than he's right. So don't make your sheikh your book. Yeah. Yes, Habib. تفضل. فيكم بارك الله.
You know where I come from in North Africa is that when you were talking about madhahib and whatnot, a lot of people say that it's encouraged to follow the madhab of your country. But the problem is that where I'm from, it's hard to find a teacher who's upon the aqidah of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, because the country where I'm from, Tunisia, there's a lot of, of Ahl Tasawwuf and whatnot. So it's a bit hard for me to, study the Maliki madhab. So in this case, should I, start with another madhab like the Shafi'i or the Hanbali madhab, which is the two I'm looking at, or if so, do you know any Maliki teachers who are upon the correct aqidah?
Very good. So the first issue is with regard to the madhab in particular countries, no doubt. Like there are some countries and cultures that are inclined towards a certain madhab, and it makes sense if that's what you're dealing with every day. It makes sense for you to study that madhab. Because remember, a madhab in al-furu' al-fiqhiyya is just a curriculum. That's all it is. It's not the right thing. It's just a curriculum of consistent textbooks that will take you to a recognized goal. So if you were to just pick and choose, the problem is the textbooks are like, it's all over the place. You can do it, but it's very hard. However, it's also true that the Jumhur, being the Malikiyya, the Shafi'iyya and the Hanabila, have more similarities between them than the Hanafis, the Hanaf. They are very different in their usul and their books, whereas the Jumhur, those three, they mostly, when it comes to advanced topics of usul al-fiqh, they kind of use each other's books interchangeably to a certain extent. So it wouldn't be really hard to do that. Having said that, the thing that's going to limit you with a madhab is your teacher. As you said, it's going to limit you what teacher you have access to. And sometimes it's just not possible to find a teacher in that madhab at that time. For example, myself, when I went to Saudi, I could not find, if I had a free choice, I would have rather have studied the madhab of Imam al-Shafi'i, to be honest, rahimahullah. But I was kind of without a choice. I was kind of in a situation where everyone is teaching the Hanbali madhab. So it doesn't make sense when you're a teacher here and your access is all for the Hanbali madhab, and then you take the Shafi'i madhab and there's nobody to teach you, or there's nobody with the correct aqidah to teach you. So my advice would be, if you find that you're in a masjid where the Shafi'i madhab is quite well taught and you have good access to that, I see no harm in you starting with that, inshallah. There are teachers, of course, upon the sunnah teaching madhab Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, but finding that might be a little hard for you in the beginning. What you can do is start off with the madhab Imam Shafi'i from reliable teachers whose aqidah is good. And then, inshallah ta'ala, what you can do is to transition into the Maliki madhab when you find the right teacher for it, inshallah ta'ala. And there is no harm in that. Like in the beginning, it's more important to stick to one that you have a teacher today in front of you is more important than something that you might use in the future. Because in the future, you're going to study anyways what they term al-khilaf. Like not al-khilaf as in the subject, yani maddatul khilaf, the subject of khilaf. And what are the differences between the madahib? You're going to study that anyway. Like a person can catch up on their madhab later. The only issue would be with the Hanafi madhab because it's so different. It's very, very hard. You have to take it from their own books from beginning to end because it's very, very different. Like in the Jumhur, it's close enough that you can jump with a little bit of, although the Maliki is harder than the other two. Shafi'i and Hanbali are easier to jump between. But yeah, I would say if you find yourself a Shafi'i teacher or a Hanbali one, but if you find yourself a Shafi'i teacher who's good and it's easy for you, I would go down that route and later on try to catch up on the Maliki madhab when you find people upon the Sunnah who are teaching that madhab from its books. Yeah. And Allah knows best. How was learning Arabic for someone who didn't have prior Arabic experience. So first of all, wallahi, learning Arabic is probably the single most important thing after memorizing the Quran that you can do to further yourself in your religion, is to learn the Arabic language. Wallahi, I don't know anything after memorizing the Quran. I don't know any single thing that can further you in your religion more than learning the Arabic language. Because at the end of the day, the hadith, the tafsir, the fiqh, everything is in the Arabic language. So it's very, very important. My experience of learning Arabic, I have very, very strong views on this topic. And I have kind of spoken about it at length before, because I feel that we often make things very hard for people to learn Arabic. We make it unnecessarily hard. Let me give you an example. If today, one of you wanted to learn French or Spanish or German, you could literally download an app and just go through flashcards, and like in a very short space of time, you could easily learn the language in a way that was quite relaxing and easy and fun. But wallah, I don't know, for Arabic it seems like we want to torture people, you know, like, so we start with al-ajru mi'a. Why you kind of kill the person? Like, could you imagine if you started French or Spanish like that, learning that, like trying to learn like that? You took an advanced book of grammar and you started to break down the grammatical cases and the context of the tenses and all that stuff, and the person is just like, yeah, but I can't, they don't feel it, they don't take it, it's not sweet for them. So I'm not against that. It's a beautiful thing to study. Again, it has its place, right? And it's very famous, the famous statement that طعام الكبار سم الصغار. The food of the old is poison for the young, right? So you might give someone a really good book, but it's a really good book for a person at a certain level. Like, I believe the way people should approach Arabic to begin with, like they don't know any Arabic, they should approach it by learning it in an accessible, easy, enjoyable way, and focus on building vocabulary, getting exposure to the language, and just being able to use it even if it's a little bit. I had a friend of mine, he's a medical doctor. He's a very, very beloved brother to me, very, very nice brother. He went to Hajj with me every year. We used to go to Hajj together. He was the doctor and I was the religious guide. Okay? So we used to go to Hajj together. And he said to me, the only thing he does is just try. He said, I just go there and I have fun. And sometimes I say funny things. And he said, you know, I go there and like, I remember one time he went to the hospital and he said, I'm looking for a woman, because there was a patient, this lady, she was sick. So he went and he tried, and he's trying to say in Arabic, I'm looking for a woman, and he ended up saying, I imprison women. Like, and it happens, but he just said with a smile, and he said, afwan, wrong, I said it wrong, and he says it again, and he tries, and wallahi, his Arabic went so good now. Just practicing and trying a little bit, and you saying some words and getting it wrong and trying again, and a little bit of study. But this whole torture of torturing yourself with Arabic grammar, really for someone who doesn't know any vocabulary, doesn't know how to make sentences, and you know, they say that Nahu, Arabic grammar, is like salt. This is a famous statement of the scholars of Nahu. They say it's like salt. Too much of it ruins the food, too little of it ruins the food. Yeah, too much of it ruins your food. So you're taking someone doesn't even know the word for a pen, and you're teaching him aqsamul kalima, and then you know you're teaching him al-marfu' wal-mansub wal-majroor wal-bina' ala al-raf' and all this stuff, and he doesn't even know the word for a pencil. Why are you torturing the brother like that? So I think just make it easy for people. Let them learn vocabulary, let them learn children's, let them read little books for children, let them just practice. When they get to a certain bit of being comfortable with the language and enjoying it a little bit, let them take a little bit of grammar along with that, so that they can start to understand a little bit of sentences, and let them just consume content. So that's what I tried to do in my Arabic course. I have an Arabic course with AMAU, and if anyone's interested, you can go to amauacademy.com, and there is a full Arabic course on there, or it's getting to be a full Arabic course. And inshallah ta'ala, we try to make it easy for people. We use little flashcards and, like just try and make sentences and try not to make it heavy on people. But I just feel like we got something fundamentally wrong. What we got wrong is we confuse two things. We confuse someone who speaks Arabic, who wants to improve their language with someone who doesn't speak Arabic at all, and we give them the same medicine, and I don't think that's right. If you have someone who's an Arabic speaker and they want to access Quran and Sunnah, we give them grammar and morphology and nahu, sarf, balagha, and all that stuff. We give them that because they have Arabic, as you know, they chat to their parents in Arabic in a basic way. They have their, you know, their accent and their dialect and everything, and then they perfect it by learning Fusha through proper Arabic books and everything. But to do that to someone who doesn't know what the word for a pen is, to me it seems to be the wrong way of going about things. And we should make it more like how people learn French and Spanish and German and Italian, like exciting and easy and quick and fun and accessible to everybody, rather than something heavy and difficult for people. I was blessed because I learned Arabic in Medina. The Medina books are good. I have my reservations about some things. Like in the books are, you know, may Allah reward the author. He did a fantastic job. Fantastic job. But it's not the best book for that, what I said about it being easy and enjoyable and fun. But because I was two years in Medina doing it, you know, alhamdulillah, you get to the end no matter what. And you practice in the streets and you practice, you know, going to the haram and coming back and in the university. But for people at home, part-time learners, you've got to have something that's engaging and enjoyable and fun. And Allah knows best. I think we're getting towards the end of the questions. We can take a question from our brother, and I think that we might be able to draw a line there, inshallah ta'ala. Yes. How do you choose the right madhab? Whatever I'm going to say now is going to make me enemies, huh? Like, if I say choose whichever one you want, a group of people will be angry. If I say فَوَصِيَّتِي لِلنَّاسِ أَن يَتَشَفَّعُوا, a group of people are going to be angry with me. If I say فَوَصِيَّتِي لِلنَّاسِ أَن يَتَحَمَّلُوا, then half the masjid is going to stop talking to me. For what shall I say? La wallahi, realize that the goal is not the madhab. The goal is the Quran and the Sunnah and what the Sahaba were upon. The madhab is a tried and tested curriculum. That's it. Okay. Khilaf, khilaf is something that has to be there. It's not praiseworthy, but you cannot escape it. And the Prophet ﷺ said, فَإِنَّهُ مَنْ يَعِشْ مِنْكُمْ فَسَيَرَى اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. Whoever of you lives for a long time is going to see a great deal of ikhtilaf. Like, the question is, whether your touching a woman breaks your wudu or doesn't break your wudu, the first thing is the person's mentality is, I want whatever is pleasing to Allah and what the Prophet ﷺ came with. If that means I have to make wudu, if I touch a woman, that's what I have to do. According to the dalil. In the beginning, you don't have the ability to evaluate the evidences. In the beginning, you're like a little child. Your teacher tells you it breaks your wudu, khalas, it breaks your wudu, finish. That's it. Because you don't have the ability yet. But as you grow in learning, you start to have a little bit of ability to analyze and evaluate, and it becomes easier. So I would advise you stick with the madhab that you have. Is the question about the madhab or the question is about touching the wife? No, ask your mashayikh. But it's not, wallahi, it's not good for me to answer. I tell you why. If I give you an answer according to the Hanbali madhab, I'm going to tell you something. And your sheikh has been teaching you according to the Shafi'i madhab. First of all, it's not good for him because I'm undoing the work he's done. He's telling you one thing and I'm quickly undoing it. That's the first thing. And the second thing is going to lead people to confusion. Ask the sheikh who teaches you fiqh in the masjid, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khairan. I said that was the last one. How we will give you put your hand up. One more. Go on. Very good question. Giving da'wah to people that you're not very close to, how do you know the boundary between too little and too much? Some of that is about wisdom. It's something you learn through practice. So you see that sometimes you went a bit too far and sometimes you didn't go far enough. But ultimately, the more you learn about Quran and Sunnah, the more you're going to learn how to give da'wah, because it's not something, it's something the Prophet ﷺ taught every last thing how to do it. Who to speak to, who not to speak to, how to speak to them, when to start, when to stop. All of it is there. We just have to learn it. So learning the Quran and Sunnah is very important, but also what's extremely important is practice and experience. You learn like when to step back a bit. And Allah Azza wa Jalla said, يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Allah gives wisdom to whoever He wants, and whoever has been given wisdom has been given a great deal of good. Ikhwani, jazakumullahu khairan wa barakallahu fikum. I really appreciate you guys listening, asking excellent questions, and that is what Allah Azza wa Jalla made easy for me to mention, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Whatever I said that is correct, that is from the grace of Allah and His mercy. And if I said something which is wrong, then that is my own mistake, and that is nothing to do with the religion of Islam at all. هذا والله أعلم والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Any last comments, thoughts?
Jazakumullah khairun for everyone for coming.